Oh well, should we get started? Should we get started for
Yeah,
real?
totes.
Sweet. I wrote an
For
intro
real,
script.
dude.
Because there we go.
Yo, let's go.
Now I'm nervous. Whatever. So,
No worries. It's chill. And it's not like we're doing this live. You can always like cut out lines or retake if you have a particular like stumbling moment or something.
makes sense. I will do that with my pro resolve skills. Okay, let's go. Let's do this. So,
Okay.
hey everyone, welcome to VG3, the intermittent podcast where we talk to various guests about video games. Today, Monster Hunter Wilds, mathematical optimization, YouTube, and maybe just a bit of anime and weeb culture. I'm SunTide, and with me today is a very special guest, a great inspiration to not only me, but I think countless other set builders on YouTube, on Reddit, on Discord, and everywhere. So please give a warm welcome to one half of the Mathalos nest, JINJINX. Whoa, JINJINX.
Hello. How's everyone doing tonight? Or today, or whenever you happen to be watching this? It's a YouTube video after all.
Yeah, my computer right now is still in my old time zone, so it's nominally 12:20 a.m. I don't think it's 12:20
Gotcha.
outside.
It is mid-ish late afternoon right now in Arizona. Let's go. Which means the sun is no longer blindingly in the sky and is slowly retreating.
Yay! Yay!
Hooray! I love living in the desert.
I just moved, so we'll see how I feel about the weather. Right now, I'm dying for like
Fun.
pollen.
Yeah, you did mention that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to live in Georgia, so in Atlanta, so
Oh, yeah?
southeast, and very different kind of heat down there, especially during the summer.
Oof. Well, I guess I'll
Like,
start to learn the
yeah,
U.S.
I hope
states.
you like humidity.
eventually.
Or buy a dehumidifier.
One by one, one by one. Like established, I think I told you before I recorded. I just bought an Ethernet cable after my terrible stream earlier today. Just bought a monitor.
Yeah.
um,
It's okay. These are like the learning stumbling blocks of every new creator is being like, oh man, I mean, it is better that you went the direction for like, especially like starting off streaming where you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna try the stream versus being the one who's like, I'm gonna spend 2 months making sure my stream setup is perfect before I ever go live and actually find out if I like doing this.
yeah, that's true. I think it's always good. Yeah, I think I'm. Yeah, what am I saying right now? There are those stumbling blocks we were talking
Oh yeah, no,
about.
it's fine. Like I said, that's why it's nice to do this like not live, because that way you don't have that way you can always like retake things, you can always cut stuff out.
Yeah, true. But yeah, so speaking of trying and retrying, here we are with a podcast that I've tried to sort of revive slash start again. Before I did this with mostly like personal friends of mine from real life and whatever else.
Yeah, of course.
But I thought it'd be a good time to talk to you, whose content I've always been a huge fan of, like
Lush.
ever since the World days. You guys were great. Like I think I spoke. I was talking to you about this before and in comments and whatever else, but I think you like genuinely inspired a lot of the content that I personally was doing, and I'm sure a lot of the whole community. I still get so many comments on my YouTube that are like, "Oh, this guy seems to just, my work is like following off on what you were doing back in the World days," which is, I think, very impressive.
Lush.
So yeah,
I mean, like,
I just want to ask. Sorry.
oh no,
Go
it's
on.
fine. I mean, like, it is always really nice to hear from you and all the theory crafters and some content creators and stuff, like both in like the Monster Hunter space and like the Gacha space. Because after War and Iceborne, when Genshin Impact came out, like I started doing theory crafting like day 2, which is when I started playing, and there really wasn't much in terms of EN theory crafters. It's really nice to always hear that. And I'm glad that, like, at the very least, I guess I'm very glad that at least my stumbling and unhealthy career in YouTube for myself at least led to a bunch of other people picking up the torch, for lack of a better word. I feel like that sounds weird, but it's nice to see that there are still people who are now doing this, especially with Monster Hunter, because I've been kind of struggling with I guess the motivation to like actually do the kind of content I used to for it. So it's nice to see there are others like yourself who are like putting in the work to do proper calculations, to figure out what the best assumptions and everything are, and to present that information in like a very understandable way for people to be able to refer to, because like, you know, all these kinds of communities, like all these games, we need theory crafters, and I'm just really glad to see that the theory crafting scene in Monster Hunter is not only still alive, but also like has grown. Because way back in the day, when World started, because the Monster Hunter games before that were definitely a lot more niche, there really wasn't much in terms of like actually sitting down and calculating theory crafting before like I lucked into having a viral Call of Roth guide video blow up and just went, okay, I'm just gonna ride this and see what happens. But
yeah, I was going to say that. So, so how did you get started then? Because I know that, you know, I started playing Monster Hunter by listening to your content, listening to like RX, Gaijin Hunter, and all this stuff. So how did you get started doing your stuff?
Yeah, so like the original how it originally goes. So how it goes is that I started playing Monster Hunter World because I enjoyed it a lot. It seemed like a very interesting game. I grew up as an old school, like I'm a millennial. As a VTuber, I like to say I'm a hack because I'm fucking 32 at this point. And I grew up on like OG FromSoft, like pre-Dark Souls games. I played
wow.
Demon Souls, like the original Demon Souls, like the first year it came out, and played the hell out of it.
Wow.
And I never got around to like playing
2000
Kingsfield, that like first game. That's a bit too old for me, I guess, when I picked it up. But like I've always really enjoyed those kinds of, you know, skill-based, more cerebral learn like the proper matchup and how to respond to situations, kind of third-person like combat games like that. Like I enjoy things like Devil May Cry and Ninja Gaiden and stuff from back in the day too, but like Demon Souls and then later Dark Souls and then especially Monster Hunter feel like they have a bit more of like a cerebral elements to it comparatively. They're a little less twitchy and like twitchy action, and a lot more like, okay, you have this particular weapon or playstyle you've chosen. Now you have to figure out how to effectively deal with this boss fight or, you know, monster or whatever in your matchup, how to deal with them in a very an effective manner, right? So I started playing Monster Hunter World just because, like, I was like, oh, this seems cool, and I have a PS4, and then got really into it, and then like most other peeps who didn't start from like, you know, watching a content creators or being in their community or something, just like joined the Monster Hunter Gathering hub, chatted with people, made some friends, played some stuff together. Then when Call of Roth came out, I was like, man. This is a really weird fight. Like, this is really weird. And then, like, because I'm the type that's like, okay, I want to do this efficiently. So I look into things, and it's like, wow, no one knows how any of this stuff works with her. How does this stuff work? What are these mechanics? And I think I remember that, I think it was because I was in a Rex Discord community in the earlier parts, like after I kind of dipped my toes into the Gathering hub. That's where I made a lot of my friends who are still like very old friends of mine at this point, right? But when I was going through Call of Roth, Rex put out a video about getting like a one-run Call of Roth, because back then when it first came out, the assumption was you had to do it twice, right? That was kind of the idea, is like, you know, you have a big lobby and you do it twice, and etc. etc. But then they managed to get like a single run clear and like posted about it on YouTube. I'm like, huh, so that's possible. I need to figure out how to do this as efficiently as possible. So I started doing a bunch of research into it, and then chatting with a bunch of peeps about it, and then those peeps ended up working more and more together, and then one of the two of them were very fluent in Mandarin, which, despite being Chinese myself, I have horrible Mandarin. But they were also looking at like the Chinese speedrunners and stuff. Yeah. Oh, sorry, what was that?
So better than my zero, I suppose.
I mean, I know like 10 phrases, so probably not that much more. John Cena is much more proficient in Chinese than I am.
But John Cena is impressive. So
true. True.
But yeah, sorry, go on.
Lao Gan Ma.
I think that's all I know.
I mean, to be fair, if there's any Chinese word or name for you to know, it should be Lao Gan Ma. That stuff is crack.
I've never actually tried. Sorry, this is getting incredible.
No, it's fine. I mean, I mean, we can tangents. I'm a very tangent rapper. It's fine.
That's true. That's true. I should try cooking with Laogon at some point. Never actually used it to cook.
It's really good. I mean, it depends on the one. Like, there's a lot of different flavors, right? My personal preference when it comes to Laogon, the most popular one by far, especially like with like non-Chinese friends of mine that are like familiar with it outside of like me introducing it. The favorite's pretty much always the fried chili crisp. Because that one is the most... Yeah, that one's the most textural. It also has like the most... I don't want to say simple flavor because they all have like a nice depth to flavor of them. But it is the one that has like the most just like pure like dried chili flavor to it, I guess. While my actual personal favorite and what I prefer to use for sauces, because like I find the fried chili crisp because of the texture is really good as like a topping or something like that. Or like a garnish. Oh, yeah. Something like that. But if you're making an actual sauce or cooking something with it, I prefer the fermented black bean version.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I think those are two that I always hear about, yeah.
Yeah, that one has a much richer, deeper flavor to it, and yeah, it has a lot more going on, but it definitely does not have the level of texture that the fried chili crisp has, which you can literally just throw on anything, even just like a bowl of rice with some Kewpie mayo or something, just be like, I'm going to eat this as a sad lunch right now.
I guess something. I think I need to learn, what's it called? Having moved here, I finally have a kitchen that is more than like a stove and a tiny little bench space.
Let's go.
So now I can actually try and cook things that are slightly more complicated than put some veggies and drop some spices and sauce in the pan.
Let's go.
So I can try different sauces now. I can have some Laogon Ma or whatever else.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, like, it makes it, and it's great just by itself, but it's great if you mix it into other, if you couldn't tell, by the way, I like cooking a lot.
Yeah, no, that seems to be the case.
Well, like, my like career background, like, as I understand, you're a physicist, and for me, like, math has always been like a fun like hobby thing, but it's never been too related to my career. I guess I did when I was working in consulting, it came up a lot. But my career has been like over a decade in high end and fine dining hospitality, so bartending, serving, generally end up accidentally in leadership positions, but not like full management because managers oftentimes make less than like the top earning like floor staff in a restaurant. Really? It's kind of sad, but they get benefits. But
yeah,
like,
so I can ask that actually.
Sorry,
go on. I was going to ask about that actually. So you did hospitality, and that's just like all sorts of caretaking type stuff.
Yeah, well, when I say hospitality, it means like specifically like restaurants, bars, clubs, lounges, that kind of thing.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah.
And so you were doing like chef cooking type work, and then became a manager at some point.
So basically, I've always loved cooking. Like when I was a kid, apparently, when I was like I think like 3 or 4 years old, my parents got me like a little step stool so I could reach the stove because I like to cook like instant ramen in like a pot as a kid or something. And like being Chinese, and especially being like Hakka, which is like an ethnic group it's like a smaller ethnic group in China, like food has always been a huge part of like our family and culture growing up. So like my mother also was the event coordinator of the Chinese Business Association of Atlanta when I was growing up over there. So like I would go to like 2 to 3 like Chinese, like, you know, massive Chinese banquets a year at least.
Wow.
So food's always been a big part of my life. And then when I kind of just like accidentally fell into like restaurant work, I really enjoyed working with and chatting with like the chefs and figuring out like what their dishes were like and what their thought process was and learning all about these things. I never worked back of house because it is tragic how little money they get paid in the US. Like genuinely tragic.
Really?
Yeah, no, it is not good, especially considering what like the servers, bartenders, anyone like that, even like the server assistants, like busboys, can oftentimes make more money than a line cook. It depends on the place, of course, but like the wage is not good compared to what, generally speaking, at least in like high-end fine dining. I can't speak for anything below that. I lucked out and started in quote-unquote fine dining, which was not run well and desperate, which is why they hired me with no experience. But you know, it looks good on a resume, so whatever.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, but anyway, food's always been a big part of my life. Cocktail is also a big part of my life. Before I moved to Arizona, I was managing a craft cocktail bar in Atlanta. It's a lot of fun stuff. Anyway.
Makes sense. And that.
Yeah, Laogon Ma.
Sorry. Hey, it's John Cena's favorite, I suppose.
I mean,
The main things I know about Lao...
Yeah, it's my favorite too.
The main things I know about Lao Gunma are, one, what you've been telling me right now, John Cena memes, and like this one video from Chinese Cooking Demystified. It's a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
probably.
familiar with that one. Yeah. I've looked at a few of their videos for some of their recipes.
Yes. Yeah, I never really learned. Yeah, so my mom was Chinese background, but she was also an expat, so I'm fairly far removed from the cooking culture.
Sure.
So yeah, I think food YouTube has definitely helped me improve my cooking skills beyond what it was before I had to move out.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, like that. It is cooking YouTube is such a good resource.
Yeah.
It's such a good... Like, I was fortunate to learn to cook when I was younger because I had an interest in it, and my mother, like, helped, like, nurture that when I was a kid, right? But, like, the, like, 3 essential skills that, like, every, like, functioning adult needs in the modern world is they need to be able to, like, know how to and be able to pay for bills. They know how to do their taxes, or at least, like, get someone to do their taxes, and they need to know how to cook.
Hey, cleaning is important too. Cleaning...
It is, but you can get away with being, like, a horrible slob in terms of cleaning and hire a maid and still be a quote-unquote functioning member when you dress up and leave the house.
I guess that's true. Oh no.
But yeah.
Where were we before we start talking about Lao Gunma?
Lao Gunma.
Chinese speedrunners, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, wow, this is going to be a very efficient podcast. But yeah, so basically we're looking at Chinese speedrunners and stuff as well, on like Bilibili and things like that, and like the Chinese speedrunners were figuring out a lot of tech. They didn't ever talk about it, right? But they would be competing for like, trying to get faster times than each other, so we'd see what they did and be like, oh, they just did a thing. We have to figure out how that thing works now. And then like through our own testing, right, we would do a thing, but like, why did Call of Taroth shed her coat in Area 2 right now? Now we have to test like 25 things over the course of the next like 10 plus hours to figure this out. And it was a really fun discovery process, kind of figuring out all of these things and like basically for us as a group trying to push for the world record. And it was that was also my first that was actually my first, like, I guess, experience with specifically doing spreadsheets in Monster Hunter, not for any actual like optimization, well, not for like any like set related or like damage calculations, but it's because I was calculating the status thresholds to maximize the CC chain I could do on Call of Taroth at the same time of like, going from like doing like KOs and paras, working in sleeps at perfect timings, trying to make sure things are timed so that like the next one gets triggered perfectly at the end of the getting up animation or whatever for the last one, or like even like a few tens of frames after, so that they can start another animation and add a little bit more time for us to get more and more damage in, right? Like it was very interesting doing all of that for calculating like the chains and everything. And then like once we got like the world record, it lasted like 23 hours before a CN team dunked us again.
Oof. But hey, you got the record, so that's something you can brag about.
That is the thing. It was also kind of a nightmare too, because like, if like for people who aren't familiar with like Monster Hunter speedrunning in particular, when it comes to like not full game like campaign speedrunning, but just for individual fights, because monsters at least back then in like World and Iceborne and Rise would have like randomized spawning points. There's always one that is the ideal spawning point that lets you cut a few extra seconds, and the Call of Taroth one, I swear, was like a 10% chance of spawning.
Oof.
On
Really?
top of that, like, all of us had SSDs, but one guy in our group had an HDD, so it'd take us like a minute of loading to reset. So we get like a good attempt like every like 20 to 30. We'd be able to even make an attempt every like 20 to 30 hours sometimes.
Oof. That's terrible.
It was a grind.
Wow.
But yeah, that happened. And so like because I learned all of that, because I learned all of that, like I posted like the video and everything, it did like okay. I mean, for like basically the only channel on the video hitting like around, I think, like 8 to 10K or something is pretty good. But then, like, in, like, Arex's Discord and in the Gathering Hub, people kept asking me, like, all these same questions about Call of Cthulhu, being like, okay, how do you do this? Okay, what is this, though? Okay, but how do we do this? I'm like, and after, like, a week of that, I'm like, I am so tired of answering the exact same questions 25 times a day on Discord. I'm just gonna make a video and just link them to that. And I hadn't even thought about the idea of, like, YouTube being able to be, like, anyway monetizable or anything like that at the time. I didn't even know how it works with YouTube monetization. But I was like, I need to make this video because I don't want to keep explaining and typing the same line, like, 20 lines of text every day a bunch of times. Yep. So I made the video and put that one out, and then it just, like, fucking exploded. Like, it went viral in the community instantly. I forget exactly how much it was, but it definitely hit, like, over 40K in, like, the first few days or something like that.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yep. And I was like, oh, wow, this is getting a lot of attention. And this is a very big number for what is effectively the second ever video on this channel that otherwise has, like, that one run. And then, like, 3 meme runs that we recorded so I put on there so I could share them with my friends. Like, silly, like, cluster runs and stuff like that. But yeah, then I posted that and it blew up. I was like, huh. I should, because, like, the idea of being a YouTuber was always interesting to me, especially when I was a bit younger, because I think I was, like, 23 or something when this happened, 23, 24, something like that. And, like, much younger Jinx was, like, very interested in YouTubing, but, like, never really got started. Was always in, like, the, okay, what kind of channel should I do phase? You know, you're like, standard, like, putzing around and being, like, and not actually getting any steps done to actually do the thing.
That's what you were saying earlier about how you just need to try things sometimes. If it fails, it fails.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like,
that's always been my principle.
Oh yeah, no, like, I am very much the exception. I am not a case that should be emulated in how to, like, you know, make a career, quote unquote, in YouTube, because I literally just got massively fucking lucky. There was literally no one other than our speedrunning group and, like, another ENC speedrunning group and then, like, a bunch of Chinese speedrunning groups who knew any of this, because none of us were sharing it with anyone else because we wanted to get the record. So, like, how phase 2 coach shedding, how, like, all of these different, like, CC chains, how the timings of everything and how you should do each of the, like, the different phases in order to cut down as much time as possible and get it done in one phase. None of these things were, like, in any way public knowledge, and none of them were able to be, like, there was nothing in game about it. It took extensive hours of testing to figure out how they work, because there's such, like, weird arcane mechanics that you go, okay, we think it works this way. Do, like, 10 more tests. Okay, it works this way, but specifically also this way, and it doesn't work this way. Like, it's insane that they added all of that into KT. We're just like, we're not gonna explain literally fucking any of this. You're just gonna do things, and sometimes a cool thing happens, and you're like, I don't know why that happened.
I think in some sense what it did, I think part of it was to help the community grow, right? And to get the community to talk to one another, and that's why they make something so obtuse sometimes.
Yeah, like, that's definitely a fair point.
And, like, Alatran and whatever else just being, like, for example, just weird with all of the thresholds and whatever else. I still remember, like, I woke up early that morning to try and get Alatray undone. I was playing Longsword. It's a Dragon Longsword. I think I failed, like, 3 times. Did the 4th time. I'm like, hey, I got this done with my Dragon Longsword. I think I posted on, like, your Discord or some other Discord, and I'm like, hey, so I managed to succeed this with a Dragon Longsword. You all should try this Dragon Longsword.
Let's go.
I think I unintentionally ruined, like, a bunch of people's days during that.
And I'll get over it. It's fine.
Yeah, well, now we know. Now we know. Yeah,
true.
And now you can even beat Elatraion's check with snowballs or whatever else. Because
Let's go.
all helps each other grow, which I think is it's nice about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really cool part about Monster Hunter as a community specifically too, is that, like, there's so much to learn. And there's, like, such a level of depth and complexity, not just to each weapon, but also how each weapon matches up with each different monster, right?
Yeah.
And no, it's just really cool. There ends up being a lot of talking and chatting around that. The issue becomes when there is, like, toxicity and elitism, which we ran into a problem with in our community, because, you know, it's the meta sets. It's the ones you should be running for most damage. And then people being like, oh, no, you have to run. Oh, I can't believe you're running defense boost or yada yada, and you need to be running this set. And like, no matter how, like, at a certain point when we realized how bad the elitism like was getting, even though we were trying to police it. Well, I say we. Yep. I had like literally zero to do with the like Discord server or moderation or anything like that. Like that was all like division of labor, right? That was all like 200 part of things. But like there was an issue with it. So like at the beginning of every video, I started being like, hey, it's just a game. Let people have fun. They don't have to use like the meta sets. It's fine. These are just exists. These are just, I'm just putting these out there so that way people who wants to do the maximum damage can know how to do so, right? Because Monster Hunter's damage formula isn't like super complicated, but it's complicated enough that balancing out like the skills does matter a lot for eking out those extra few % of damage.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not like a lot of other games. It's like, oh, just build as much crit as you possibly can.
Yeah, but I think reading things like through the comments, whatever else now, I do feel like to some extent people are more chill now, or maybe it's just the community in my comment section or whatever else. But I feel like people understand that damage is just a choice.
Oh yeah,
and you get a nice mix of. Okay, I feel like whenever I post some videos, I get people being like, "Hey, why do you consider this skill way more important?" And the equal amount of people in the other direction being like, "Why do you consider this skill at all?"
Yeah.
Which I think is a good sign that, people are generally pretty happy. You'll never please everyone, but I think people are generally pretty.
And that's a very good mindset to take to it, because you will literally never be able to please everyone, and you should not try. A lot of these people are very not worth pleasing.
Yes, that, and I think I've also just stopped. So. Like stop going on Reddit and whatever else, my Discord. So I create this Discord like solely to talk to people who I know. So I don't follow. I'm not in your Discord anymore.
Oh yeah, no. I think the last time I posted in Mathalos Nest was, I don't even know how many years ago it was. Even when I was doing this full time and fully active, I basically never posted it in there or ever like hopped in like VC or anything over there, because I remember like very distinctly. I think it was after we broke like 50k subs or something like that. Like I remember very distinctly one time I popped in to a VC to like chat with like some friends and peeps and stuff, and then like 30 people just joined into the VC, muted, listening. I'm like, this is not during a stream right now, that's the assumption. So this is kind of fucking weird. Like this is a little weird right now to know that. I mean, I get it. It's fair, right? Because like they all. For the most part, they joined because of like our content and everything, and I was like the front-facing person of the content. But it was still just like a very like eye-opening moment to hop into a VC that didn't have like a member limit to chat with some peeps, and then just like within the course of like 2 minutes, like 30 people joined, just muted. I'm just like, I'm not doing this again. Yeah. I mean, obviously there's like moderator chats and stuff like that, but generally speaking, my Discord groups and VCs and stuff pretty much always end up happening in separate Discords.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Of like my closer friends and stuff, especially a lot of peeps that I met like in my early Monster Hunter days through like a Rex Discord server and everything like that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But yeah, that's how I got started doing YouTube stuff.
Yes, that's pretty weird. So I started like talking to people, whatever else, in your Discord server, and you started it in Arex's Discord server.
Yeah,
I wonder where Arex started, because Arex started like what, for you or something, right?
Yeah, Arex has been around for a while. Like Arex was like kind of, at least as far as I saw, I was like Arex and like Team Darkside were like the two like monster like and Gaijin Hunter, sorry, but they were like the like three like big content creators in the EN space for Monster Hunter before like Worlds kind of blew up its popularity and everything.
Yeah, makes sense.
And Arex did a very good job with his content. Him and his peeps did a very good job with his content of being able to like branch out from just Monster Hunter into just general like gaming stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
Which is a difficult transition to make sometimes.
Yes, because you tried that for a bit, right? Because you're doing a whole mix of everything right now. You're doing Gacha, Genshin. You did Genshin for a while. Oh
yeah, I mean right now really like I have decided for like the past like I don't know 2-ish weeks to just kind of take a hard break from Wilds for a second for a variety of reasons. We get into that later. But right now, when I do, like, I'm not really that interested in editing videos or doing any of that right now. So right now, I've just been kind of doing streaming as a hobby. I'll just post a scheduled stream like an hour before I hop on stream and mention it on Twitter and be like, hey, I'm going on stream in an hour, and then just hop on stream and play like some gacha or something like that, whatever I feel like streaming at that time. In fact, tonight after this, I'm probably going to just do a stream of like finishing up all of the Withering Waves story content and events from this patch I haven't done yet to farm up pulls for Zani, because I have been really lax in finishing those, and now I have like 2 days to actually finish them.
Well, nice. That's nice. Like,
Yeah.
and it's glad that I'm glad that you're all you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
And having fun.
No,
And just,
definitely.
still doing, and still being out there in the community where people can see you if they want to.
Yeah, and like with Wilds, I am gonna be like popping back on and doing some stuff a little bit before probably like early next week, just before like AT Raidao comes up. Also finish up some of the event stuff and everything. And I do have plans in the future to do the PCATS challenge. So my friend PCATS, who also met like way back in the day in the early Monster Hunter days. She is now an arts YouTuber / streamer. She's become very successful. Super proud of how far she's come since she only started this up like 2 years back or something. But yeah, she's very great content creator, very knowledgeable and very good at arts, very humble and also just very entertaining. Definitely gonna recommend checking her out if you're a fan of like arts content. But she's also like OG Monster Hunter player. She did a challenge during like the first 2 weeks of Wilds coming out, where she aimed for a sub 4-minute run with every weapon against the optional Arkveld mission, and that sounds like a lot of fun. So I guess as a way for me to kind of like have a reason to like play more Monster Hunter, that seems like it would be a fun challenge to do. I would definitely be aiming for sub 3 on some of my main weapons, because I'm sure I can already very consistently hit sub 4 with like Charge Blade and Switch Axe on okay runs against like an Arkveld. But
I'm sure you're a much better hunter than me. I feel like I would struggle with like the under 4. I would do it eventually, but I feel like I would struggle even with a longsword, and every other weapon I'd need like days and days to prepare.
Whether I'm better or not, I would probably contest, but I definitely have... Like, whether I'm better or not, I would probably contest, but I definitely would say I probably have more experience in, like, actively min-maxing and learning fights, and I just, in general, might have a stronger knowledge base for that, because A, I started this speedrunning Call of Troth, but B... Once I started doing YouTube full time and theory crafting full time, the people I chat, like, I would spend like 30% of my time chatting with like my closer friends and like peeps I met like from early Monster Hunter and all that kind of stuff, right? I would spend 30% of my time chatting with other theory crafters and like people who had like the like my peeps who like, well, not only my friends but also had like the set makers title or role, sorry, it's the set maker's role in like the Discord server and stuff, because they were also helping with like making sets and like setting up albums and like testing and discussing things. And then the other 40% of the time I spent chatting with speedrunners, because that was like my main other friend group of Monster Hunter players back then, right? 1 second, I need some water. Mouth dry.
Yep. All good.
Remember to hydrate, people. It's important.
How to get a water filter. Like, water filter was the first thing I bought when I came
so
here.
good. Yeah. So helpful. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time hanging out with and chatting with speedrunners, right? Which is why I also like have a massive complex about being like, I'm not actually that good at this game, because the people I compare myself to are fucking world record speedrunners.
No, man, okay, fine. But like, no, I can see that now.
Yeah, and like I kind of accidentally fell into like those kinds of groups, because like, with me being me, like I'm the kind, I'm like, okay, I want to get better at this. I'm gonna research the hell out of it, and by far the best way to like learn how a weapon matchup goes is to look up good time attack speedruns. anyone listening or anyone isn't like familiar with what TA is, basically when it comes to like speedruns in Monster Hunter, you have like freer style ones where you can use anything. You can use traps, you can use bombs, you can use mantles, you can use all that kind of stuff. You can use heroics, and then you have TA, which is called time attack, which is like the idea is that it's like you and your weapon versus the monster. So you can't use items that aren't like healing items and buff items. Like you can use like Mega Demon Drug, Demon Powder, all that kind of stuff, but you can't use any other items. You can't bring your Palico with you. Like it's basically just like it's me fighting this monster. You can't capture. You have to kill them if you're doing TA, although it's been a little weird with Wilds where there's a lot of people doing TA capture runs just because they made the runaway threshold kind of ridiculously low in this game compared to like previous games, so it can be really hard to actually manage to get something to die. Even if you clear them super fast, they will oftentimes be able to run away without like a flash pod or something like that. Especially because a lot of monsters are harder to build a consistent trip on now comparatively for like wound systems and all this other stuff going on. But anyway, so a lot
and
of
the zone's even larger.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But so
the zone's even larger for
sorry.
actual.
Sorry,
go on.
No, you go ahead. You go, please.
I was gonna say, and the zones are even larger now, so even casually, when they do run away, it'll take you like a full like 2-3 minutes just for the monster to get to the other side of the forest.
Oh yeah, no, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's not just like that the zones are larger. It's also that they run so many more zones now in a lot of cases. All my homies hate New Udra running back to their little home, their little hiding hole.
It's terrible.
Christ, it's so bad.
Should we talk about Wild specifically first? Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say I kind of fell into the speedrunner crowd because I was like looking up speedruns because that's like the best way to like really learn how to make your weapon better, and I would message and I saw like cold messaging them and asking like questions about it, and then a lot of the speedrunners and all the other speedrunners I chat with, because like as competitive as it is, generally speaking, at least in my experience with the Monster Hunter speedrunning community, which is like at least in more than Iceborne, like 60% of like the top scorers, with 60-70% of the top scorers were people I like knew and chatted with. It's actually they're very friendly with each other. Like, it's not like as toxic as there are some exceptions that are particularly infamous on Twitter, but they're generally like very chill with each other, and they might not necessarily share strats with like their competitors on the same weapon, but oftentimes they will, because they just want to be the best, even with like equal playing field. But yeah, a lot of them just end up coming to me and like asking me about like specific set optimizations, like, hey, I need to run these specific skills for like my particular script or this setup, like how can I get the maximum EFR out of it, etc., etc. And I had a lot of fun making those like custom sets for them, basically. But yeah, so TLDR, hung out with a lot of speedrunners, horrible complex about how good I am at Monster Hunter because of that, but also it did teach me how to like learn matchups and how to like figure out how and like basic concepts for damage optimization, DPS optimal DPS play against monsters and things like that because of it. It's also why I was able to make like a bunch of like weapon guides and stuff like that, and like old meta set guides and stuff, is because I didn't know how to play a weapon, but my speedrunning friends does.
I was gonna say, because your weapon guides were generally, I remember your weapon guides being really good and just being a really good resource for someone who was starting off like me at the time.
Appreciate it.
And I'm like, I could never be able to do anything like that.
Well, yeah.
I can tell people,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can tell people with a longsword, press these two buttons and alternate them to do max damage, but I can't really say much else. It's just all, force that splash, I think the monster's gonna attack you.
Yep. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, is like, it's so arcane, right, as well, right? It's like, there isn't really a great way to like test DPS. Like, yeah, we have like a training dummy with its like DPS and damage and like damage count and stuff and everything, but that doesn't really help you that much. And in a lot of cases, I was actually like calculating motion value per second for different things to kind of figure out the better combos. And in fact, that was also stuff I would do custom for some speedrunner friends, was them asking me, hey, is this combo or this combo going to be like better overall? Because like if they have like a 5.5 second window they want to fit this in, there's like different kinds of combos they could do that might be better than each other than like your standard bread and butter stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, just being able to chat with speedrunners and be like, hey, how the hell does hunting horn work? And then Griffin being like, here is all the details on Hunting Horn. I'm like, thank you. I will never learn this weapon. But yeah, very helpful, really cool, and really cool people. It's kind of like one of those, like, you know, competitive athlete, like, vitriolic friends kind of thing, right? It's all like in good fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Makes sense.
But yeah, very fortunate that happened as well. Like I said, I just lucked into a bunch of the shit.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah, I think because I mostly talk to like my real life friends and whatever else about this game.
Oh yeah,
I work the subreddits and other YouTube channels and whatever else, but I've never sought out the opportunity to speak to speedrunners too in depth. I did some weapon guides for Rise and Sunbreak, and for those I spoke to speedrunners for weapons that weren't the longsword.
Oh yeah.
Just because I didn't want to say anything completely dumb. But I think that's part of why I've speak so generally about weapons in Wilds now, because I have no clue how to play the Hunting Horn. I've never touched the Hunting Horn in my life. Gunlance, I can like stab people and shoot a shelling, but that's it.
Oh yeah. In Wilds, though, as I understand, the combo is pretty consistent because it's the funny new blast swing thing with the worm stake and like the MVS and like hit zone value independent damage per second is like absurdly high. Gunlance is so overtuned in this game.
It's crazy, but look, I just want to hit the weapon with my big sword, okay?
No,
Is there anything wrong with that? Give me my long sword or my great sword. Sometimes I'll appreciate two smaller swords, because two are better than one.
I see
But-
I see you are a big sword user. Well, time to learn
long
Switch
sword.
Axe.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to play the Charge Blade for a while, but never got around to it.
Oh, it's fun. I mean, I'd be
I think I
happy
just
to like
like
teach
it.
you stuff about it because like I always have been a Switch Axe main, but I've been taking a
Yeah.
really long break from Switch Axe because Switch Axe in Wilds is a bit boring.
Really?
For lack of a better word, because it's basically you just do like your for release / loop as much as possible because like the MVS between that and literally anything else in Special Access Kit is absurdly big.
Oh,
Like, I
really?
forget the exact numbers, but, like, Axe mode, like, Sword mode over Axe mode, especially and when amped, is, like, I don't remember, it's, like, 40% better MVS or so compared to Axe mode, which is not, like, it was always around, like, 20 to 40%, depending on game. Because that's kind of the entire point of Sword mode, is it hits harder, but you crawl around and you can't roll after attacking, you have to hop. And then
Right,
you have for release / loop, which is I think like is like over 40% better than sword mode, which is already like 40% better than axe mode. Don't quote me on those numbers. I'm probably misremembering. But Sash, another peep I chat with, Sash is like the Switch Axe theory crafter on Gathering Hub, and he has a Switch Axe guide that's very good if you want to go look that up. Anyone who's interested in Switch Axe. But yeah, he knows the exact numbers. I forget the exact numbers. Point is, the discrepancy between spamming for release / versus everything else is absurd. On top of that, for release / has super armor frames through the main part of the damage rotation. So it's like, it's a bit like how optimal longsword play was in base 1.0 world before they added EI and anything like that, where it was like, you know, just do as many Helmbreakers as you
Sword
can,
Helmbreaker.
to the point where like my speedrunner friends would often complain about longsword speedruns because you may play the longsword matchup perfectly. You react to every attack perfectly, maximizing all the little DPS you can put in here and there. Like, you do everything correctly, right? You'll still be beat by a speedrun who is just a guy who just YOLOs as many Helmbreakers as possible and resets until they have enough of them land. And it's kind of how it feels with like Switch Axe too right now. So I picked up Charge Blade instead, and it's basically become my main weapon for this game, at least at the moment, because I just really enjoy the playstyle a lot. It's really satisfying, and it's surprisingly more mechanically deep and like knowledge and game sense deep than people think it is, even though the combo itself is actually pretty simple.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's a very
I think,
cerebral weapon.
I suppose some of that is like this discrepancy between like casual players and
Oh, for
speedrunners
sure.
there. Because for me, like I found that to increase the speed of my hunt, it was all about making sure I landed those Spirit Helmbreakers, or
Oh,
in
yeah.
Rise and Sunbreak, the EI Spirit Slashes.
Yep.
And so feeling the improvement in the speed of the hunt proportional to how much better I am at landing those counters or landing those high commitment moves was very satisfying. Even though I do see what you're saying about how for speedrunners it becomes all about optimizing and re-rolling for the YOLO.
Yeah, well, so that's not always the
Homebreak
case, but it is the case. It was specifically the case with Longsword was the case in Base World. Once they added EI Spirit Slashes and once they added more content, especially in Iceborne, it did change up, and there was definitely a lot more skill input needed than just YOLOing Helmbreakers. But like at the end of the day, like that's how it was initially, and that's kind of how Switch Axe speedrunning is right now until they make some changes, or like really the only thing they can really do if they don't like actually change like the motion values on the weapon is they just need to make better elemental weapons. Because Elemental Switch Axe plays very differently, and I want to play Elemental Switch Axe. It's just it doesn't win any matchups against 4 Release Slash right now. Because Elemental Switch Axe is sword mode just swinging, and they made They made like sword mode swinging, which is what I love doing in World and Iceborne. They made that much better in this game.
Is full release slash one of the combos that activate airborne?
No, it does not. No, it does not.
Okay.
As funny
so
as that would be.
Is they can just buff the airborne skill to like 30% like it was in Worlds and change Switch Axe that way.
Christ.
That's my dream. Like they buff airborne 30% again, and then longsword is suddenly Spirit Helm breaking again.
Yep.
Crazy.
But yeah, like if you ever want to like learn and pick up like Charge Blade, I'd be happy to like teach you some stuff. If you want, we could even like do a stream where like you learn it, and I just hang out in VC and like teach you
that could be
shit.
fun. We could try that in the future.
Yeah.
That could be really cool.
Collabs are fun.
Oof.
Even if we spend 47 minutes
hard.
yapping.
But yeah, so okay, we should probably talk about Wilds in specific for a bit of time. So, what do you think about Wilds, and also the Switch Axe in Wilds? I suppose you've covered, but Wilds in general.
Yeah. Also, thank you for reining me in. Feel free to like rein me in and like get things back on topic. If you couldn't tell, I'm very good at tangenting and yapping. It's one of my better skills as a streamer is just yapping. But
hey, I cannot do that. So these are skills and talents I wish I had. Like,
I'm just
my talent is just being like my talent is being a nerd and crawling on a spreadsheet or like on code until like 2 a.m. in the morning, not talking until 2 a.m. in the morning. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and like you don't have to like be a yapping streamer either. I think the most important thing with like talking on stream, just as another quick little tangent, really is just that you need to be able to like constantly be entertaining in some way. So like even if you have like a busy enough chat, you can just respond to chat constantly, right? And that's what I used to do back in the day. But nowadays, because like my stuff isn't the Monster Hunter mathing stuff and it's much smaller crowd, like I have to be able to like talk and react to what I'm doing myself. I think the best advice I heard for it was from I think Giga, who is like a VShojo VTuber, said that like the best way to go about it is just imagine that you're like recording a Let's Play, so you're like talking and reacting to what's happening in the game and stuff like that to make sure that you're not just like sitting there playing a game. Obviously, if you're just doing like math and stuff anyway, like you can be plenty entertaining just talking about the math and things like that. But yeah.
I suppose experience also helps. Like I've personally, like, this may sound a bit weird, but I personally found it in my life, like in my real life, I get better with just random small talk with random people.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The more recently I have released a YouTube video, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There was just like 1 year period where I released nothing, and I'd just be like, "Hi, I'm Ralph, and I have nothing to say about anything." But like, I feel like, having to be able to talk about things in a brief enough but interesting enough way for people to care about on YouTube is a skill that is practicable. Yeah, and I feel like I take fewer takes.
Scripts because it's a recording, right?
Yeah, I've been bad at that.
I think if you don't need to write scripts, don't write scripts. Because like I would still definitely say like all of your content I've seen, you do a very good job explaining it in a way that is easier to digest, which is very important with like math and theory crafting stuff. Like it's very important to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's part of the experience. So when I first started doing like sub YouTube videos, explainers on my channel, not for Monster Hunter but for Rune Factory, I was speaking to my friend. I'm just Factory. Like, Hey, wait, you play Rune Factory?
No, I
Oh.
have wanted to, but I have a very deep, important history with like anything rooting from Harvest Moon and all that.
Why? Oh, like you started with Harvest Moon? Or what?
Yeah, no, it was like one of the earliest comfort games I had when I was much younger. Was the one
yeah.
on the GameCube. It also probably, I think it's also like one of the few things that really impressioned my incredibly unhealthy attraction to redheads. But
I never played the
And
old
artsy
Harvest Moon
women.
games. I started with Rune Factory too, so like that, I am a new, in quotation marks, comfort games fan, as I think they call it. But yeah, no. I was just saying that basically, I feel like when I first explained to my friend, I'm just like, so as scientists, half our job, our job every now and then is just make a PowerPoint presentation as quick as we can,
Let's go.
and figure out the minimum amount of effort that we can do to explain this to the next person
Yep.
in our next meeting.
Yep, which
And
makes
I feel
sense.
like that's the sort of that's the sort of energy I try and do for my videos. I'm just like, how easy is this going to be for me to make, while also being for them to understand, for everyone else to understand, and that's sort of the vibe I go for. So it's simple text. If I mess up with my phrasing, whatever else, just try again, and just try and make sure that people understand. And I think it's also a bit easier because I'm not that great at the game. So I don't need to, what's it called? I'm explaining not too complicated, motion value combos or whatever else.
Yeah.
Or particular moves that we're waiting for to counter or whatever else. It's just, these are the general principles that are going to work for 90% of situations, because these are the things that I know. And for the math and optimization, which I am good at, then I can
very
spend
good
more
at.
time on those.
Yeah. I mean,
which
it's
is
good that
what
you're
I-
playing to your strengths too, and not trying to act as an expert on something you're not expert on. Because that's also been a very big issue with like Monster Hunter theory crafting back in the day. Like I said, the scene's gotten so much bigger, like both in Rise even, but also especially in Wilds, that there's a lot more resources and people like yourself who actually like really crunch the math and everything. But like there was definitely a big problem of people being like, people like with a platform being like, this is the best set. I haven't calculated anything, but I'm pretty sure this is the best one. And then me coming around being like, actually.
Okay, so those are fine. What bothers me are not those people. It's the people who, after people like you or I or the people who make the sets, then post them as their own.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is. I mean,
Yes.
it is what it is.
I think
Like, if
that was
another
my-
theory crafter comes up with the same thing, I mean, realistically, you're going to reach the same conclusion if you have like the exact same set of assumptions, right?
So-
but like, yeah, I get it.
Okay,
If like
so-
someone who doesn't crunch the math, like, just is like, oh, hey, this is mine now.
No, yeah, and I think that's part of why I started doing the full-on set builds for Monster Hunter. Like, I think so. I used to like do stuff like just posting Imgur albums or whatever else with the sets and the math, and then I just vaguely remember like posting elemental longsword stuff and being like, use this on this monster, that monster, that monster, that monster, use this element on these monsters, and then a much larger YouTuber who I assume you would know who they were.
Smile.
Basically just posted the entire, like, yes, use these weapons, use these monsters in the exact same terrible order that I had. Copy-pasted from my imagery album.
Did they at least credit you?
No.
Oh wow.
Do they ever?
Well, so that's
Do
the
they
thing.
ever?
I don't mind if they do it and they credit, right? Because at the end of the
Yeah,
day,
same.
the reason like why like we do this kind of thing is to spread the information around so more people can
Yeah.
know it. So that's no problem as
Exactly.
long as they leave a fucking credit. Like it's not that hard.
Yeah,
Thanks
like, I
to
do this for
X
fun, so
user
I'm not
on
too bothered.
Discord for like posting these in X Discord server, or this person on Reddit posting this in what blah blah blah. It's not that hard, guys.
Yeah. It's, yep, no, I agree completely. And I think from that, I'm like, I should probably make my own YouTube videos explaining my own stuff
Let's go.
instead of posting them on Imgur.
Yep, and like you said, you have a very practiced skill in presenting the information in an easy to digest, like, efficient way, and I think that definitely shows through your contents, and that's like, probably, like, other than doing the math correctly, that's pretty much, like, the most important skill for, like, any kind of, like, theory crafter, or, like, tutorial, explainer, whatever kind of content creator, right, is to be able to do that.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I think you do a very good job with it.
You saying that.
And like you
I
mentioning
appreciate
how...
you saying that.
Oh, sorry?
I appreciant you saying that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I did not mean to talk over you like 3 times, but I do
No,
that
it's okay.
sometimes.
There's nothing important there from me.
No, I mean,
But yeah.
I think everything you say is important. It's your podcast, and also, like I said, I yap way too hard, and like one of my like neurodivergent traits of my ADHD is that, you know, in normal conversation, you like say something and then you wait a period of time to see if they start responding. The problem is my brain runs so fast, the amount of time I wait can often be like a third as much as you probably should. So then I start like another statement right as someone else starts talking, like I'm like, oh wait, fuck. And Discord audio delay doesn't help either with that.
No. Oh well. I would thought it would be better now I'm like in the same content as you, but no, it seems to still be like half a second or a second or so.
Oh yeah, I mean it helps,
Oh, well.
but like there's always gonna be some delay when it comes to
Yeah, sure.
yeah, when it comes to that. But yeah, and like I was saying earlier with like the streaming and yapping thing, like I have that developed skill set because I worked in high-end restaurants and bars for over 10 years. And part of the reason why I could also do like the explaining thing well is because I also ended up being a trainer in the vast majority of those cases. Just because, like I said, I liked learning about the dishes and like learning about all the drinks and everything just because I find it interesting. And then I ended up being the person that like, oh, we need to write up a new like menu document. I'm like, I know everything about everything on here. Sure, I'll write one. And they're like, okay, can you train these new people? I'm like, sure, I can do that. Just give me a pay bump. Like,
Which is yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think so I think the different background has had a huge impact on how we do the things.
Oh,
Because
for sure.
me, like,
Yeah.
I'm used to being like, hey, you're wrong. You did a terrible job of this, but you're still a cool person. It's grab years later. It's complete. Like I'm not so practiced on softly telling people off for real practical mistakes. In,
Yeah.
for example, builds and whatever else. And I think that's caused some issues in the past with like
no,
some of the
understandable,
communities.
yeah.
But I think I'm getting better at that at least, and I think just practice always makes things
Oh yeah,
at
practice
least a
and
bit
like
better from time to time.
sorry, yeah, yeah,
No,
like
that was-
like practice and especially like conscientious practice, I think is really important. Being like just like because the awareness is necessary. Practicing the wrong things just makes you worse at the thing, right? But like the fact that you're
true.
conscientious and aware of it means that you have like the ability and room to grow with that, and it is a process. If you don't have
that's
these
true.
skills already, which when it comes to content, you'll probably be bringing in skills you have, whether they're soft or hard skills from your previous experience into the content creation, but you need a lot of different skills as a content creator, and these are the ones you just
Yeah,
kind of
that's
have to learn. Like you were saying, like with learning your editing with DaVinci Resolve, like that's a very necessary one for any YouTuber who isn't just paying an editor.
That's true. That's true. Oh, okay. We should probably start talking about wilds for real now.
Right! It's okay, we're only 59 minutes in.
For real. Let's talk about wilds. I don't know why we
reals.
kept stalling with that for so long. What have you thought about wilds?
So,
I assume you got that pretty early on. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries. So like I very much enjoy Wilds a lot. It does have some issues, and part of those issues have been like part of what's made me not as grind obsessed from day one as I have been for the end game right now. But I will say like Wilds is a good, in terms of just purely mechanics and everything, right? I think it is a good evolution of what we had built in World and Iceborne. I'm so
What do
glad
you
we
mean by
removed the clutch
mechanics?
claw,
Yeah,
because
that's true. That is true.
I liked the clutch core in concept. The issue is that it made clutch core made them redesign all the hit zone values for monsters, meaning that instead of it being like a bonus where it's like, oh, you can make this part that wasn't this weak point into a weak point, because they lowered all the hit zone values, it became mandatory if you wanted to do good damage. Like if you wanted to just have even the same damage you had before Iceborne was installed. And I think that was a really bad call on their part, because requiring softening to be a hard mechanic was not great. But removing that and instead giving us wounds, I think is a really interesting layer to the standard like mechanic system that Monster Hunter has. It also adds like both a lot of complexity in terms of like min-maxed runs where you're like actually mentally keeping track of how many hits it takes to trigger a flinch or a trip on this body part, so you can plan around that and everything. Adding in the wound system adds an extra layer of complexity to that. And also, I think it's incredibly good for more casual players, because more casual players now have this ability, this like very clear setup, like, oh, I beat this thing up in this area really nicely. Now I can do a cool little wound attack that also gives me some benefits for the mechanics of my weapon, and it's on the leg, so this monster trips over, and it makes it.
Yes.
It feels really good, because like when you're like really min-maxing your gameplay, like I tend to do, and like my speedrunner friends and everything do, like a thing that happens is like damage counting, where you kind of. Even if you don't count the exact numbers, you kind of go, okay, this many of these hits will cause them to trip over when you hit them on the leg, and you can plan around that, right? You can plan around that for like when you want to have them trip over, or if you want to chain CC or something like that. But because wounds allow you to do a similar thing, but it doesn't require you to be as conscientious of it, and you can still be like, okay, there's a wound on the leg, I'm going to beat up its face, and then at this point, I can now trigger the focus attack on the leg and trip it over, right? Like, having that access to that kind of a thing as a casual player, I think is very healthy, and I think has really been part of what has really helped the, like, even the additional exposure to non-Monster Hunter previous players. Because, like, World was already, like, pulled in a bunch of non-Monster Hunter players, but Waz is doing an even better job of that, and I think the wound system is a big part of that, honestly.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that, like we were saying before, part of Monster Hunter's identity is that it's partially so obtuse. Like, there is such a big difference between starting off and becoming good and expert at speedrunning and doing all those things.
Oh, definitely.
But having this little transition step of the wounds being, teaching you about when you can have an on-command trip, for example, or, the very first attempt at damage counting before, you lose the wound and therefore lose the focus attack, is, I think, such an amazing thing that they've added, and way better than the Clagger. I do not like the Clagger at all.
Oh, God. I will say, shooting a monster into a wall was fucking hilarious in Iceborne, but that's pretty much the only good thing that came out of Clutch Claw. Also, I will never forgive Clutch Claw for ruining Switch Axe.
Wait, what did it do with the Switch Axe?
So I didn't personally play this style. It's also funny because the change they made that, in my opinion, ruined Switch Axe also made it significantly more popular, at least in like fucking like Valkana and like Elatrian fights. Because previously in World, and theoretically also in Iceborne, it's just realistically it didn't work out that way. Like, your highest DPS was still to go into amp state with like a powerful weapon, a powerful Switch Axe, and then just basically beat the fuck out of their weak points with your sword attacks and everything. Which is where Switch Axe is the most fun to me personally, because it's very high risk, high reward. But with Clutch Claw, you could just Clutch Claw to a monster's face, and then ZSD for guaranteed damage and explode off, and then repeat the process ad infinitum, and then thing dies. And it was like, Switch Axe speedruns were so interesting in like World because of like how it's like all this like low min-max gameplay of how like you have to like, in order to actually like compete and be at that level, you have to be very good at hopping, iframe hopping attacks, like knowing what attacks you can hop through, and sometimes having to do near frame perfect inputs to hop through a hitbox. Which, by the way, still very few dopamine hits as strong as in Monster Hunter as perfectly iframe hopping an attack with Switch Axe. It feels so good, and 4-release Slash doesn't do it, and that's part of why I'm mad at it.
But yeah. So it sounds like you think that the Switch Axe, or at least weapons in general, or Switch Axe in specific, is much worse in Wilds than it was previously?
No, definitely not the case. It's specifically, I dislike the changes to Switch Axe. There are a lot of weapons I think are much better.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it is a case-by-case basis. Like, Switch Axe is the strongest it's ever been. Like, in terms of just, like, competitive clearing times, like, it's by far the strongest it's ever been. Because even with a really high-risk, high-reward playstyle in, like, World and Iceborne, if you want ZSD spamming, it still ended up, like, in terms of, like, how fast the best clears are, so it ended up at, like, upper middle, despite the fact that you had to, like, learn how to, like, be really good with iframe hopping and things like that. Which, if anyone listening doesn't know what, like, iframe hopping is, whenever you do a roll or a hop, you have a certain amount of invincibility frames. similar to Dark Souls and those kinds of games, except for Dark Souls has literally twice as many iframes. It's part of what makes Monster Hunter more difficult, is that you have very little, like, invincibility frames. But this is especially hard with a hop, because, like, rolls normally, you can use the invincibility frames to get out of the active hitbox, and then otherwise not be in the hitbox anymore. Because you move so little with a hop, you basically have to make sure that the entire active hitbox that is trying to do damage to you, you manage to get purely into the invincibility frames of your hop, because you're not getting out of the way of the attack. You barely move.
So I can't play switch axes. I need the longsword counter, and it's like it hits you within the invincibility frames, and then you are perfectly clear for the rest of the animation.
Ah, but you see, in Wild, Switch X now has a counter.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah, which I think is a good addition to it. It's just, again, the full release slash thing. But yeah, in general, like, I think most of the weapons, as far as I can say, like, have improved. It's just Switch X in particular, I dislike the changes. I think full release slash is great. It would be great. The issue is the numbers. Because it's so much obscenely better than every other option, it's always the optimal choice is to just go, I'm just going to full release slash here. Will it hit or will I get knocked off it? I don't know, but I'm going to do it. YOLO.
And then you have the super armor anyway, so even if you do get hit, chances are you will ignore it.
Yeah. I mean, you have super armor for a part of the attack, and definitely part of min-maxing Switch Axe is kind of being able to, like, consistently time that so that if you do get hit, it happens during the super armor. But like I said, I just find it a bit more monotone than, like, how Switch X previously played, outside of ZSD spam being equally as monotone.
Makes sense. And Charge Blade's still about guard points, or?
Yeah, so, to some extent. So, like, Charge Blade, in base world, Charge Blade was SAED spam. You know, like, the really big, like, slam down, massive explosions happen attack on Charge Blade. It was
which is why I wanted to play it.
Oh, yeah. It was very much about that in base world. In Iceborne, they introduced Savage Axe, which is the spinning pizza cutter attacks, and they would win different matchups. Basically, one wasn't strictly better than the other. In Wilds, they have actually kind of pretty heavily nerfed the SAD style. So, like, for raw non-elemental, it's just, generally speaking, worse than doing Savage Axe now, because the Savage Axe motion values really go burr, just like the pizza cutter does. But it's still the best option for elemental is SAD spam.
Okay.
Because, especially on really good hit zones, like, I think Gravios is, like, the biggest example, because his belly is, like, I think it's a 50 water hit zone value or something?
Yeah, it was something crazy like that, I remember.
Yeah. But on top of that, the belly is really big, so it's much easier for you to land all of your files on it. With, like, really, like, min-max stuff, I think Rainy, who's a Charge Blade speedrunner from way, way, way back in the day, I think Rainy did a run in the first week with, like, a perfect Arsham weapon where he was hitting, like, 700 damage files on Graphios every time. It died so fast. But that's, like, you know, obviously the extreme example. On decent hit zones, you can probably expect, like, around 300 damage per file, maybe 200, 250 on decent ones. But yeah, like, I like it a lot because I like the Savage Axe playstyle, and also because Charge Blade is uniquely good at running, like, even including, like, other KO weapons, is uniquely good at running, like, paralysis and, like, as, like, a cerebral thing, because it has impact file is raw damage file, basically, for, like, the raw damage types of weapons for Charge Blade, but it also deals KO damage on their head. And you are able to, and, like, you have, like, the little bits of KO damage you do with your normal Savage Axe hits on the head, and then you have your AED, which is, like, the softer version of the SAED, because there's a super in front of it, where instead of, like, dumping all your files in the big slam, you do, like, this big swing, and then where it hits, it'll do, like, a few very strong file bursts, like little explosions on that part of the monster, and it deals a shit ton of KO. In fact, like, against Mizitsune, and I think even in 2-player, because it happened in a 2-player hunt, you hit a single AED on its head, and it's stunned at that point. Because of that, it's also a very long wind-up attack, though, and so because of that, there is a lot you can do in terms of scripting, which is, like, where you have, like, a specific series of actions that happen at certain parts of the beginning of a fight that you kind of build around, where it's very realistic for, once you get really proficient at it, for you to be able to do something like a KO into a para, into a KO, into a trip, with Charge Blade, where you just have, like, a full, like, 40 seconds of beating the monster.
Oof.
And that's
Okay.
that's part of the cerebral element I really like about Charge Blade, is that you can set those kinds of things up, and it's very funny that Charge Blade is not only one of the highest DPS weapons in the game in Wilds, it's also pretty much the best crowd control weapon in the game.
You just have so many options for how to knock
Yeah.
down the monster.
Like Hunting Horn and Hammer are also both the KO weapons, but they don't really have the same level of scripting potential because their KO is kind of more evenly spread out, while Charge Blade has like the big spike in KO you can do through the AED.
Right. Huh. Interesting. I did not know that. Oh, you're definitely making me want to try and learn the Charge Blade now. Give me
I
more
will
options
teach
then.
you because it's a fun weapon. And it's very
Give me more
satisfying weapon. Hitting things with the Savage Axe is incredibly satisfying. Chainsaw literally go burr.
One day I'll try something that's not the blade.
Oh yeah.
Ah,
No rush.
but yeah.
But yeah, otherwise
Oh,
with
so-
like Wilds, yeah, I do think the weapon changes were pretty good. Really, my main issue with Wilds right now is that, and I think we briefly talked about this before, like when chatting about like this upcoming podcast. But like my biggest issue with Wilds, and it still hasn't really been resolved, but hopefully it will be resolved fairly soon, is that the end game is just a lot worse than it was in World and in Iceborne.
Definitely seems so.
Because, like, I mean, at the end of the day, you're always going to have a grind that's part of the end game. That's kind of like how Monster Hunter works, right? You play campaign, you enjoy a few fights, and then you just enjoy fighting the things you enjoy fighting again as part of the end game grind to get slightly more, incrementally more powerful. And that was always, like, farming for, like, incredibly low drop rate attack decos in base world, as well as just general deco farming. With like Call of Taroth and stuff, it was trying to get Glutton and like a few of the Kiara weapons, which I don't know if most people would say they enjoyed those fights, but it's a grind.
It was an experience.
Yeah, it was certainly an
Instead.
experience, and it's definitely part of why those initial videos blew up so much, because people wanted to do it efficiently, but like
I think
didn't
it's
know how
part
to.
of the good memories
Yeah,
of like mid world. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I did enjoy that time in hindsight.
Yeah.
Trying to get those
It was fun.
long swords.
and especially it being like multiplayer too meant that if you had friends to play with, it was a really nice bonding experience and everything, right? Because
Yeah.
it wasn't just solo
Yeah, for
play
sure.
endgame stuff.
For sure.
Which-
And now in Wilds, it's what we can multiplayer crown hunts, I guess, more efficiently than doing that solo.
Yeah, I mean, they
But-
added some quality of life stuff, definitely. But like my big issue with like the end game in Wilds is that there's a distinct lack of variety, because like now they added Zoshia, but I don't think it's necessarily a good inclusion. But like if you
Yeah,
want to
what's
do
wrong
like
with Zoshia?
yeah, I have gripes about the design of Zoshia. Admittedly, when I was really struggling
tell
in
me.
the stream where I first fought Zoshia, it's because I was an idiot and my Anjagor set had like -8 or -10 fire resistance. So I was like, why do these things keep one-shotting me? What the hell is going on? And I was like, oh, it's because I have -10 fucking fire resistance.
Okay, fine.
But
Other
like,
than that, like I thought Zoshia was a good fight.
I think
like
it is a
Zoshia.
good fight. I think there are design issues with it. Similar to how like
Okay.
like Lunastra in World was a good fight, but there are distinct design issues because they're both very clearly designed for multiplayer. So in
yeah, sure.
solo runs, they do not translate as well into solo runs. Like they are designed for multiplayer. Because like the amount of large AoE, the AoE spam, the size of the monster, like all of these things are very designed to be in multiplayer, but you can fight them solo. And in solo, these hitboxes and timings become a much bigger issue. Same thing with Lunastra, where Lunastra had these AoE attacks with really awkward hitbox timings and hitbox durations for solo play, but worked perfectly well in multiplayer because you'd be like, you know, spread out and stuff. Yeah.
Makes sense.
But either way, like, including Zoshia, the end game of Wilds is Zoshia, Arkveld, and Gormagala. Because if you want to do like
Basically just
rarity
for-
8 tempered farming, which is the most efficient way to farm your Arshan weapons, because that's what the end game grind is, and that's a whole different issue with Arshan weapons, is from farming those monsters. You can of course do like tempered apexes, which is more variety, but it's just realistically less efficient. And in endgame Monster Hunter World, you had all of the elders you farmed instead. And farming Nurgigante, or Kushala de Ora, or Teostra, or fucking Kirin, like farming all of those, there was only 4 fights versus the 2 and now 3 fights you have for Wilds for that kind of endgame grinds. But I'm gonna be real, Arkfeld and Gormagala, like, they are different fights, but in terms of playstyle and approach, they're exactly the same. They are both, like, monsters with decently big AoEs that you beat up their hands until they fall over, and they have some weird hitboxes with some AoE hitboxes and attacks, but, like, it really just is, like, don't get hit by a thing, hit it on the hands, and then eventually it dies. And when you look at, like, Monster Hunter World's endgame, it's like Nergigante. Nergigante has his Black Spike mechanics, so he rewards very aggressive play. You want to be hitting him constantly to break his spikes, because that also gives you trips and everything. But if you don't break his spikes fast enough, you get heavily punished because they become black spikes and you start bouncing and doing very little damage. So, like, he rewarded that kind of, like, much more aggressive sort of playstyle. Is probably why he was my favorite Elder in the initial in 1.0. Then you have Kirin. Kirin is much more about, like, learning how to recognize and dodge these, like, very telegraphed AoE attacks, as well as doing a bit more of, like, a hit and run playstyle, or, like, trading in, like, these AoE, trading, like, in, like, the AoE slow attacks he does by hitting him in the head, and, like, very focused on especially, like, specifically hitting his head, because, like, specific target selecting. Kushala Daora had all of the aerial bullshit you had to deal with, which, I mean, most people just fucking flash podded. But if you actually engaged in it without flash pods, it's really satisfying to dunk a Kushala out of the air. Because if you, for those who don't know, anytime a monster is flying, if you can do certain, like, you can basically, like, flinch or, like, stagger certain parts of the monster, they will fall out of the ground and have, like, I think it's in War, it's a 15-second down. Like, it's longer than normal trips because they got knocked out of the air. Versus, like, the 5 seconds they get from, you know, being flashed. So if you can do it, it's much more preferable. I don't know if it's 15 seconds in Wilds. I want to say it's longer than a normal trip, but it doesn't feel like 15 seconds. I haven't bothered timing it. But the point is, you get a longer trip out of it, and they fall out of the air, and it's fucking hilarious every time.
I think they did try to implement some of that in Wilds to some extent. Like, you know, you can, when a monster does some sort of special attack, you can focus strike it off that attack.
Oh yeah, that's another really good addition, was being able to do that. That's really, I really like the mechanic.
I just wish they did that more. Doing that for when monsters are high risk and for whatever else could be a really cool mechanic. I just feel like it was underutilized. And if there was a Kushala equivalent where you could, after it does, like, some sort of nerf attack,
that's an interesting concept.
iframe that, and then focus strike would be a really fascinating way to do that.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really cool idea. I never really thought about doing it, about, like, implementing that, like, focus attack, counter attack thing into, like, a flying monster. That is wasted potential. Yeah. Huh. Neat.
Yeah, but
it's a cool idea.
Yeah. I always remember Kushala as the monster who, with a longsword, I could stagger lock by hitting the head.
Yeah, I mean, like,
there's my longsword bias.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, like, a lot of weapons had a much easier time with, like, stagger locking and with dunking Kushala, but, like, it's again one of, like, those mastery things. Literally any weapon, for the most parts, could consistently dunk a Kushala if you, like, I was mentioning, like, the damage counting or, like, the building up of, like, trips and flinches. If you built up enough damage on the head but didn't trigger the flinch, and then Kushala started flying, even dual blades, during certain attacks, you could hit Kushala's head. And if you build up to, like, let's say 50 or 100 damage left for flinch, the moment that you can hit their head, it just falls to the ground and you beat the crap out of it. Like, it's really satisfying when you kind of reach that level of expertise where you can do that kind of thing. I will say that dunking is much easier in Wilds comparatively. The thresholds are just a lot lower, to the point where, like, I do, like, two charge blade savage axe swings on, like, a Rathalos in the air and it just falls on the ground.
Makes sense. Yeah, because for me, I feel like, so I personally joined World somewhat late-ish, so I joined, I think, when Lunash dropped on PC. So I missed the very, very early World, so that's not something I can speak from experience. I know Rise, which I got day one, had similar endgame grind issues going on.
Yeah.
Which obviously got much better over time. But I feel like for a while, okay, so right now, when we're grinding late game, what are we doing? We're trying to get decorations, which drop a bit more frequently than they did in World. We aren't grinding for that one attack boost. Maybe you're struggling for a crit boost 3, but you will get it without too much difficulty at this point.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you will get all the decos you need that aren't, like, the really specific combo decos that are just good luck.
But even then, like, you aren't going to improve as much as getting attack boost 4 will get you to improve in World.
Right.
Like, the difference is so much more smaller. So right now we're just grinding for arty weapons, but even then, if you're just going to go for one and you re-roll long enough, like, you don't need that many parts either, I don't think. It's not nearly as intense as Anomaly grinding in Sunbreak was.
I mean, to be fair, Rise and Sunbreak probably had the worst farm because, oh my god, those charms. Like,
I like Rise and Sunbreak a lot.
I mean, fair.
Because I know my grinding issue. GU is terrible for the grind.
Fair.
It's because like you needed. Did you ever play GU or the older games very much?
No, I have not. I have been wanting to go back and try GU, and then I just kind of never did because Brave Heavy Bowgun looks hilarious.
I played the Longsword, obviously. I played the Valor Longsword, which is
Valor.
the
That's fun
precursor.
too.
Oh, it's so good. It's the precursor to the World Longsword.
Yep.
Where it's just all about counters and iframes, and it's crazy.
Yep.
But so, for the best... basically, you could use any bad decoration and get a pretty good Longsword setup.
Yeah.
But if you wanted attack boost at all for the Longsword, you needed a very specific decoration. And the best way to get decorations in... Sorry, talismans. The best way to get talismans in GU was on this multiplayer mission against... Oh, I forgot what the monster was. I probably should fact check myself. But okay, bottom line, it was this monster that you just had to fight the same monster over and over and over again. It was like Great Jackers, but it was terrible.
Sure.
And, sometimes you go online and people online would just not... So, GU did not have any... So, multiplayer scaling didn't happen until much later. Until after GU, until like World and Iceborne, I think.
Oh.
So you're fighting the full-out mass multiplayer health monsters.
Oh wait,
solo.
I do remember that from Tri back when it was my first game when I was much younger. Was playing Tri on the Wii. Yeah, I do remember that being the case too. You basically had to do multiplayer.
Yeah. So you could solo, but then you could solo, but it'll take you like 15 minutes to get through the fight, or you could multiplayer and then still roll a terrible team who just triple cards.
Yup.
It was. And, more often than not, like, I'd just be with random players who would just not improve the hunt time much at all. They'd just be basically, It was not fun. I never got that ultimate charm.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, no, definitely in terms of that end game, like, adding in multiplayer scaling, because World definitely focused a lot more on being able to be a very complete single-player experience, with the exception of, like, Call of Taroth and, like, later Siege stuff, but, like... At its base, it was very much designed to be a full and complete and good single-player experience that also had the fun option of the multiplayer. I think that was a very good design choice, honestly.
Which likely Walsh tried to continue on with that trend, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Possibly for worse.
But the reason why I brought up like the Rise charm farming thing specifically is because like the grind itself wasn't too bad. Like the actual like what you had to do for the grinding wasn't too bad compared to like what you're mentioning with like GU and everything. But the issue was there was some absurdly overpowered charms that had like sub thousandths of a % chance to drop that were like more efficient and like more like the actual god charms, and it reached a point where like in Rise for the speedrunning community, if you used one of those charms, you had to prove you got it normally, and you didn't cheat it in because they're so absurdly rare. They are a rounding error of a rounding error of like a rounding error of a rounding error.
Okay, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, that was kind of the big part of it. And also there's a thing to say about like the RNG. About like the like RNG result of things. That's kind of my big issue. Like back to Wilds again. Outside of just the monster variety being lacking, because you also had Teostra, which was also a very different fight, very different approach of how you handle things compared to the other elders. Like they all had very like distinct. This is the kind of play style that you end up playing around fighting them, right? But Arkveld and Gore, they are different fights. Don't get me wrong, but they boil down to basically the same approach. And the only real difference being that, like, with Arkveld, you don't want to be that far away. And Gore is a bit less scary relatively if you're far away. But, like, it got so repetitive so quickly grinding them for me, that's a lot of what killed my, like, motivation to continue playing Wilds, like, after, like, 2-3 weeks of playing. But also, I think the Arshan grind is just much worse than, like, the deco grind purely in terms of how it feels, I guess, if that makes sense. Because like, especially coming from that now pretty large gacha game background, not having guaranteed eventual rewards, right, for your grinds, and then instead getting doing an RNG grind to then get more RNG grinds feels a lot worse than, even if it's an incredibly low percentage chance, you know that when you get that attack deco, you get a guaranteed damage boost, you get a guaranteed reward. When you get that glutton or Kiara weapon from Kolv, you know that you get that guaranteed reward. On the other hand, there's always the thing with Arshin where like, yeah, you can luck out and get like a really good roll early on, but especially if you're aiming for that perfect roll, like, you can grind out everything you need to do like a full reroll or 10 and still never get that perfect roll, and you don't know if you will ever even be able to because of the layers of RNG on RNG, to the point where people end up using like seed farming with like charting out their Arshin rolls to be able to get the perfect weapon. And I just think that, I think that just, even if objectively it ends up being like a similar, like, obviously I don't know if it is, but it's a similar amount of time spent or something, it just noticeably feels worse design-wise in terms of like player feel and player experience compared to the guaranteed damage increases you got from your grind in previous games.
Makes sense. I think we're in some disagreement here. I think I did the math at one point, and it was something like I think 0.5% or 1% chance of getting an optimal R-Team weapon. So, in terms of re-rolling, you can do that in, like, not too... It's much faster to re-roll an optimal R-Team weapon than it is to re-roll for an attack boost.
Sure.
Or even Kiara Sword Fire, or whatever you wanted from Kolv to Roth. So I can say that much. And I feel like I enjoy that at least a bit more. Like, I enjoyed, having the reward in sight and achievable in some decent amount of time,
right,
without needing to spend evenings and evenings and evenings grinding out Kolv to Roth. So I think some of that is there. For me, I think the bigger issue is just once you get that, which shouldn't take all that long if you focus on it as much as you would focus on Kolv to Roth. Once you get that done, there's nothing else really there except for gold crowns and whatever else. Gold crowns and getting enough armor spheres to upgrade all of your armor sets.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that was part of the problem. Like, I guess like I definitely understand and agree with the fact that the Arshin grind being that much less is nice, but also part of what was nice about like the deco farm was that it gave you a lot of I guess just end game contents. It gave you things it gave you longer things to grind for, especially if those could tide you over until title updates for more content. Like you said, after you're done with your perfect Arshin weapon, it's like, what do I do now?
Craft a perfect Guardian for every element.
I mean, yeah, Cryzen Elemental Switch Axe, holy.
Hey, you never know, there's probably some situation where you're fighting Look, just get a Wonder One to beat up Gravios.
Smile.
That much faster.
I mean,
get a 0.1% damage bonus.
True. I definitely feel like since you're a Longsword player, like I haven't played Longsword in this, but from what I understand about it too, Longsword is probably one of those weapons too that like the argument for like Elemental Arshin is much stronger, not only because like the damage increase, but also because of like relative to some other weapons, but also because like if you're a skilled Longsword player, I don't feel like you get as much out of paralysis as you do out of a lot of other weapons get out of paralysis. Because that's ultimately the trade-off, is you trade off element for paralysis, right?
Yep.
And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and since it's a heavy counter weapon and you're actually wanting to respond to the monster doing things and whatnot, like I don't feel like paralysis is that useful compared to other weapons where like on Switch X, paralysis guarantees you get like 2 full release slashes off with like no interruption. On Charge Blade, like I said, you can do like your KO power, trip, like scripts and whatnot and rotations, and that massively boosts your ability to just beat on the thing's face with a spinning pizza cutter for extended periods of time. Like a lot of weapons get a lot out of paralysis, but I as far as I can think of right now, I feel like Longsword and IG are probably the two that kind of don't get that much out of it.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, because IG's also pretty fast and doesn't have... Does IG have any big high-command attacks? It's just a spinning slash, right?
As far as I know, it's just a spinning slash, but also, like, yeah, it's like such a lower commitments fluid weapon that, like, you don't... Standing and beating on a thing that isn't attacking versus, like, occasionally rolling and beating on a thing is not that much different.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But a part of me does think that the community as a whole has been underestimating elements like forever. Though, like I've always.
Oh, yeah.
This is a bit of a tangent, but I've always wanted to go back to World and do the element math. 'Cause I don't think anyone ever like. Obviously, you did some stuff on this. I recall at some point later on after your longsword stuff, Echoes Part 1 or someone else started talking about how fire was good against Kieran.
Yeah. Makes
Like,
sense.
like you would want Kiarsword Fire against Kieran, whatever else for the longsword and whatever else. And I feel like there should be more. Like,
Oh, I 100% agree. Like, element weapons should be
Ri-
the best DPS. That's just kind of how it should be in general, right?
Yeah.
Because you have the elemental
I
match
think-
and build multiple weapons.
yeah, and I think nobody's bothered to do the math before. So I know, so for Rise, I think that was my first big video where I did elemental longsword stuff. That was the one that got plagiarized.
Nice.
So I looked at I created a massive spreadsheet that looked at every weapon's best DPS and compared that to every monster's hit zone values to compare how much damage triple combos you would do against every single monster. And I went in back when everyone was discussing, hey, longsword's still a raw weapon because our two big attacks are fully raw. The Spirit Helmbreaker and the Ice Spirit Slash, they're both hugely raw dominated. But if you did any other attacks at all,
Sure.
it shifts massively to the element, and I think that caused some sort of paradigm shift in how much people appreciated element for the longsword. Obviously, it was still stronger in Rise than it was in World, but I'm fairly certain that people are, in hindsight, still underestimating element damage in World and in games before that as well.
Oh yeah, no,
when I
definitely. There are definitely a lot of cases. Like, I mean, obviously, I calculated like IG and dual blades and bow element stuff because,
Yep.
especially bow and dual blades, it's just like, yeah, though these are the elements weapons. So figuring out what is the best ratio of elements to other like EFR stats you can do is important for maximizing them. But I definitely do agree too that there's likely some other things that got missed because I mean I personally I stopped doing like Monster Hunter contents like before like the Latchian updates and all that kind of stuff in Iceborne, but like there were probably definitely cases with some of the weapons like longsword and stuff where with an alternate playstyle especially it would be better with elements. It's just that I didn't look at those playstyles because, like I said, my stuff was based off of what the optimal gameplay style was, which is basically what speedrunners did.
Even in Sunbreak, I recall that if you even for the greatsword, if you like put in like one or two attacks that weren't a fully charged true charge slash, I think it was like 20% of monsters, you would do more damage against like a fifth of all monsters with an elemental greatsword, which was way more than I thought. I thought it was 0.
Also, elemental crit draw greatsword was very funny in Iceborne.
That's true. Oh, I still have such a soft spot for crit draw greatsword after it rescued me in GU.
Yeah, the old school greatsword style before tackle existed.
Oh, that's great. Oh, okay. But
you mentioning that though, like you mentioning the elemental stuff, like I said earlier that like in my opinion, the game still would be the best if elemental was always like the strongest option because raw is supposed to be universal, right? Like it makes sense for raw to not always be the best. But even for a step further from that, I think the ideal situation is where element provides a different play style that is slightly better, like you were saying with longsword, and there is some of that happening in Wilds, but it didn't actually take the step far enough. Like I was mentioning with Switch Axe earlier, Switch Axe, elemental Switch Axe is best for you're just staying in sword mode, you're doing your sword combos and sword attacks, and you're not spamming full release. Full release is raw. The problem is the numbers discrepancy is so big that it doesn't matter. It still wins. The only time that like your sword mode attacks wins is if you're wearing Corrupted Mantle at that period in time. So yeah, you get like 2 minutes of elemental being potentially better than full release, and then full release just continues to do full release things. Similarly with Charge Blade, they actually did a good job with it. Like Charge Blade's the case where they actually did a good job because Savage Axe is raw damage. If you want to do Savage Axe, you play raw. It has horrible elemental modifiers, but your SAAD style is your funny 250 to 700 damage files from just building all the element you possibly fucking can on the weapon. And it's distinct playstyles for element, and I think that is truly the ideal, is that elemental ends up being a completely separate playstyle. Like,
Right.
in bow,
play
you
much
technically
of-
had that in wall, but that's because you had Dragon Piercer versus regular bow combos. It's just, again, numbers. Dragon Piercer was infinitely weaker than bow's incredibly overtuned DPS numbers with normal combos.
Right. Did you play much of Rise and Sunbreak?
I did. So I did play a bit of Rise. I like beat like the main story stuff in Sunbreak, but then kind of dropped it after that. I did play a decent amount of Rise. In fact, with Rise, I have the 23-hour Call of Taroth. I have the 23-hour Call of Taroth world record. In Sunbreak, I had a like, I think it was like 46, like 52, like right around like 2 days, right around like plus or minus some on 2 days world record run for Luna Garon with Switch Axe. And this is not because I was like super skilled, but I was good enough to be able to grind. I even grinded this on stream actually. I think I don't know if it's archived though, because I think it was on Tuner's stream at the time.
Oh, yeah.
But I even did it on stream, and people got to see what, you know, speedrunning looks like, which is reset, single thing happens, reset. Because like once you understand the fight well enough for speedrun, you know that if a specific thing happens, you have to reset because you can't possibly get the better time now. Like if they do like a certain attack at a certain time, if they do like a certain thing or move a certain way, it's like, okay, reset. Outside of just resetting
Okay,
your spawn, it's kind of wild. But like the thing is, like at the time at least, Luna Garon's Switch Axe didn't have any truly competitive runs. So I was like, wait, if I grind this, I can have a world record again for at least a little while until the better Switch Axe speedrunners go in and go, oh wait, I can beat this and do. So it lasted like, yeah, about 2 days, and I think it was, I want to say it was Kage, who's a Switch Axe speedrunner. I want to say it's Kage who dunked me with a much better time, like, saw like 15 seconds shaved off like 2 days later or something. I think it was Kage, I can't remember. It's one of, there's a lot of speedrunners.
Oh,
But yeah, no, that was
that's not bad.
that one was funny. That one was literally just pure opportunism though. Like if any of the good Switch Axe speedrunners had bothered to do Luna Garon before that time, I would have had no chance in hell. It's just I saw that, I was like, wait a second. The current record is only like 20 seconds faster than my normal clears. I can definitely beat this. And I want to do this before a better player does it.
how long did it take you to get the record once you started this run?
Probably, I don't remember. I want to say it was one stream that was like 5 or 6 hours, but it might have been 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot of
Still
RNG grinding. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of it's RNG grinding, but like I said, I'm also not nearly as good as other speedrunners, so like being able to like adapt off script and still maximize things when different things happen, I'm not nearly as good at that as they are.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, sorry. The reason why I brought that up was I think so. Rise and Sunbreak had their switch skills where you could.
Oh god, I
change basically your
loved the switch
gameplay.
skills. It was so cool.
Yes. And regarding like element whatever else, I thought that was a great. So the longsword, you had basically 2 distinct playstyles completely. You had the classic Helmbreaker style, or you had the Sakura slash into Sacred Shield style. And one was very element focused, and one was much more raw focused. And so, you know, you could, if you... one was much easier than the other.
Yeah.
So if you struggled a lot, you could switch to an easier element-focused playstyle and beat a monster with that, or if you just want to turn your brain off and grind, you had those options, and I thought that was a great thing they did to encourage different playstyles.
Yeah. That sounds exactly like Switch Axe in Wilds if the numbers were better tuned, because like full release spam is just straight up monkey turn your brain off. And elements on the other hand, like the elemental sword style is much more effort, because you have to like A, you might have to high frame hop things, but B, you have to actively make use of your counter constantly during it. But also like you say that like, cause like you say like you're just like safe after you do your whole counter in longsword. That's not true for Switch Axe. So Switch X has a forced follow-up attack after parrying, but it doesn't have super armor or invincibility frames. And there are some attacks where if you parry them, you're guaranteed to eat shit to the follow-up attack from the monster. Ogveld in particular has one where when Ogveld like jumps up and then does like the air glide towards you, dragging the chain on the ground, and then when they land, they 180 and they 180 and they chain slam you. Yeah. If you parry that chain drag attack, you are guaranteed to eat the chain slam afterwards. So you learn that you have to hop or roll that. And that's part of like, I guess, like the fun mastery part of like Switch X's counter thing. It's just that you don't really even use counter all that much with full release slash. It's mostly a way to build amp charge up. But like that's one of the things with Switch X is you have to learn which attacks you actually can parry, because some of them will just cause you to die.
Fair enough. I feel like I will get slayed by the comments if I do not mention that Longsword does have that sometimes. It's not very often, but you do have, the animation up before side slash where you can be hit.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes you need to use the other counter. You need to use the single tree counter instead. So there are situations where countering the wrong attack will hurt you.
Oh yeah. Oh, actually,
it's just very rare.
I think I misspoke. Yes. Like you do have, I think you have iframes and then later super armor doing the actual counterattack animation. The problem is when you land out of it, you can't immediately go into another counter. You have to input something else in between. So you either have to hop or slash first. And so for attacks like that Ogveld combo I was talking about, as soon as you land, the chain slam's coming down. You don't have time to do a sword swing and then counter, so you have to hop it. So like it forces you to have to iframe hop it, and the problem is the iframe hop timing changes depending on how far away he is because it's a sequential chain slam.
So to get this right, they make the harder play style the less good one.
Yes, because the numbers are messed up. But that's also another issue while we're on the topic with elements too. Unfortunately, like elements still without corruption mantle, it just still does not beat out for release even on the really good element matchups like Odogaron head and things like that. But another issue with the endgame especially is that for whatever reason, Gore and Ogveld have horrible elemental hit zones, to the point where there are speedruns that are very competitive with dual blades that use paralysis. Like, that's how bad it is. That's how bad element is against those two matchups.
Yeah, that's true. Well, okay. Maybe the new monsters will change that up.
Oh, no, exactly.
This is pretty Thunder Week.
I'm really excited for Octempered Raidao, because A, Raidao is one of my favorite fights, period. And B, that means that we're going to be getting Octempered Apex monsters, and they are just much more fun fights, in my opinion, than Ocveld and Gormagala grinds. Because similar to like what I was talking about with like the Elders and World, that they have different playstyle approaches, right? It's not just dodge the thing's attacks, hit them in the hands, and then kill them.
Are you ready for Arch-Tempered Zoshia then? Okay.
I'm just gonna pick up bow, it's fine.
Okay, wait, hold on. So we have, I like Raidao, but Uthduna, not a huge fan. Not a huge fan of Uthduna.
Oh, I don't like the Uthduna fight, it's just that it is very different, and that's, I guess, kind of the point for me is the variety exists. Fine. But yeah.
Yes. The other two are good, but Uthduna is my least favorite.
Oh, I hate Uthduna.
It's my Gammoth of this game.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I feel like we'd probably hate Uthduna for the similar reason, which is that it just has, like, the weirdest timings for, like, iframing or countering.
Yeah.
Like, it's
why does it fly in the air?
I'm like, oh god, when is it gonna hit me? When is it gonna hit me? It's still going slowly. When is this really slow hitbox gonna collide with my hurtbox? I don't fucking know.
And then, like, you dodge it, and then why is this wave coming at you just so slowly? Like, hurry up.
It's just like... Please, just do like a fast bitch slap or something. This is absurd. Yeah, I just like that fight. I love the Raidao fight. I think it's really fun and engaging. I love our... Wow. My brain is completely blanking on the fucking name. I love the octopus.
Octopus monster or giant dude?
Octopus.
Which one?
I love the octopus. Like, it is such a fun fight, especially for Switch Axe and for Charge Blade, because it is just comical, cutting off every limb it has.
It's so good. One day I just want to like go full part breaker when I fight it and cut off every tentacle.
Smile. Yeah, I have managed to get 2 kills against Tempereds where I cut off every single limb, and like over 10 where I cut off 5 out of 6. It is very funny. It has to be Tempered because the normal one dies way too fast.
I think I've capped at like 4 or whatever it is -2. I've left like 2 tail specs. I mean, on what I've done, so I need to get better apparently.
Oh no, it's just kind of a matter of Switch X and Charge Blade are specifically good at that because their strongest attacks are like slightly angled horizontal hitboxes. So you just naturally grind into them every time you swing.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and yeah, well, Jinder Hard has the same things you were talking about with Narcotic to the extent where you're trying to get different parts and make it softer over time as well.
Oh yeah,
Jinder Hard is great.
Jinder Hard is a good fight, and definitely I think one of the better handlings of like the gigantic monster archetype. I just personally didn't like farming it for it is again a fight that feels like it's better. It translates better into multiplayer than the single player. And the other issue is it just takes longer than the other ones.
Yeah, that's true. Its health is like, what, full on 50% higher, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, even like, when you do it really fast, I think the fastest I've ever gone with a group is like 7 to 8 minutes because you have so much forced transition area timing. Like, it's just like, you lose so much time to just going between the areas, to Jinderhard climbing up onto the thing, to Jinderhard's Nova and everything like that, right? Like, you have so much, like, guaranteed time waste versus with all the other monsters where if you are good enough, you can just kill them in one area. And if you get used to, like, flash potting while your weapon's out, you can pretty consistently kill them in one area, because since, like, the thresholds for leaving area are so much like, lower compared to, like, World and Iceborne and Rise, generally the best way to make sure you get a one-area kill is as soon as they try to fuck off, you just flash pod them and then keep beating them, and you just re-aggro them by re-enraging them. I permanently carry flash pods on my normal runs now, just so I can specifically not have to chase after the monster.
Huh. I should try doing that a bit more. I do that. I'm not very good at getting it with a weapon out, which means I'm usually too late. I flash bomb its butt or something, and I completely.
I mean, at least Longsword has a fairly quick sheath time. Switch Axe is pretty slow. Charge Blade is like the slowest next to Lances. It might actually be as slow as the Lances. I'm not sure, but it takes so long for you to fucking sheath a Charge Blade.
I should know this. I did a video on it the other day, and I can't remember. All I remember is that for some reason Lance doesn't. Quick sheath doesn't work on Lance for some reason.
Huh. Interesting.
Like, it works, but it's terrible. Like, it.
Oh, the animation save is awful. Huh.
Yeah.
Weird.
Everything else, it like drops the time. I think by a significant amount of time. For Lance, it was basically Quick Sheath 3 drops off like a tenth of a second.
Weird.
Off of like the 2-second or whatever animation.
We love 6 frames of saving. That's a whole iframe hop's worth. Wow.
There's probably some speedrunner who might appreciate that for this one, secret land sheet technique.
Smile. I mean, like, maybe. I mean, it's not like they have like.
We need the melee players.
It's one of the weapons that really can't run Counter-Strike well anyway, so you have more flexibility with the Slaughter.
That's true. We need more melee players in this to tell us why the one frame can completely change the matchup.
I mean, there are potentially situations, I guess, but the niche is real, I guess, for that.
Oh, we'll see. Oh dear. Yeah. So the endgame grind for Wilds stuff has been an issue, and personally, my bigger issue with Wilds was the early game. Like, I did not care very much for low rank at all, which was a bit unfortunate. Having the auto-scrollers in every mission was not a great experience.
Yeah, I like that they were trying to make things much more cinematic with the story this time, and I do think it was fairly cool. I mean, it's a Monster Hunter game, no one cares about the story, right? Like, we literally didn't even have story in Monster Hunter until World. All the previous games like had a quote-unquote story.
Well, my hot take is I think that's a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Oh, yeah.
If we always say we don't care about it, then we're never going to care about it. But there's nothing stopping them from making it good once.
Oh, for sure.
And then having us care about it.
And I do think this
they
one
tried.
was a big step up. Whether it succeeded or not, but it was a big step up compared to
so I don't. Personally, I didn't like the criticism of, it's Monster Hunter, we don't care about the story. We could care about the story.
Sure.
They just did a terrible job of it, and we should give the criticism where it's due.
So, but as a second part to that, like, don't care about the story. The thing is, though, like, Monster Hunter players and the Monster Hunter community at large cares about the lore. And that's part of what I guess I liked about this story as opposed to I mean, it was still, some parts of World's story were, like, good for that. But, like, there's a very big focus on, like, the cinematic nature as well as a lot of the lore in this campaign. And I think that's a good choice to make. because
Yeah, that's true.
in terms of story, like we've never had much in terms of like an actual story and arcs and plot and stuff like that is particularly phenomenal. And I would personally argue that the one in Wild still isn't very good from that angle of things. And they also somehow always managed to make like one character that the entire community base just really dislikes somehow, who's like a very important character in the story. But that all being said, like the focus on the lore, especially with like the whole Arkveld thing and with like the Guardians and all of that kind of stuff, I think is a really good choice because that's always been the part that people attach to and connect with Monster Hunter.
That's true.
And it's also a very big part of the design process. For those who don't know, like there's been interviews with like the Monster Hunter design team, which has stayed mostly consistent through most of the games. Like they keep the same experienced veteran teams for most of their stuff, with some new blood coming in throughout the series. That's part of why like the development time can be a long time too, because they don't throw a bunch of extra like people at it. They try to keep like the same teams that have done really good work in the past and can evolve on what they've done in the past. But a big part of the design philosophy is that they want to make sure all the monsters make ecological sense in some way, right? Outside of like elders, we start getting to weird, wibbly-wobbly monster magic energy bullshit. Like they very specifically want to have the ecology make sense. That's a big part of their design, where like, you know, Rathalos has a flame sack. It's not a dragon that shoots fire because it's magic fire. It has a flame sack that allows it to produce fire out of its mouth. Where you have things like the Rompolo or whatever. You have like the Rompolo who very clearly is like a prime hunter in its specific environment in the swamps where it can make these gas explosions and things like that. You have like all of these like different things where they basically set it up like there is a reason this monster makes some sense in like the fantasy ecology that is the area that I'm primarily in. And that's like a big part of their focus, which is a big part of lore as well, and it's part of what people like at least I have seen people in the Monster Hunter community much more attach themselves to in terms of quote unquote story, is that.
Right, and having the constructs and whatever else really adds to that, you think?
Sorry, one more time? Sorry.
In the rune.
I didn't catch that.
So having the constructs in the runes of Bavaria really adds up to that feeling, I suppose you would say?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, like, the, like, Guardians and Constructs things, I just think are interesting new additions to, like, the lore, if anything, and kind of focusing on those is interesting. Like, it's similar how, like, in terms of the lore and world-building stuff, I would say they did a really good job with, like, the whole, like, Nergigante eating elders, energy, place elders go to die, retirement home stuff. That was all very interesting. But, like, it's not necessarily the case for me, because the first Monster Hunter game I played was Tri. I'm not familiar with the super old stuff, but a lot of my friends who have been playing since the very first Monster Hunter on the PS2, they have mentioned how there are a lot of hints and tie-ins potentially to the first two games that they might potentially develop on, which is very interesting. And I think in general too, a big thing was because they made the experience so much more cinematic, it kind of added a lot to that world building, right? Like a big part of world building is just having kind of like on display the aspects of the world building that you not explicitly told, like the Dark Souls formula thing of like, oh wow, this place looks really cool, and there's all of these like potential lore and stories behind these things, but I don't know what they are, and that kind of adds to like the interest in like the lore and world building. And I think they did a better job with that in this game.
Yeah, I can see that. So, okay, wait, what did you mean by tie-ins to the first two games? Like, you think people have been saying that they're tie-ins?
I don't know the specifics. There's some stuff with, like, the, like, Runes of Wyveria area and stuff like that, as well as, like, Zoshia as a monster that apparently have, like, potential tie-ins to previous stuff. But I don't know what they are specifically. They told me at some points, and I was like, oh, that's really cool, and I completely fucking forgot about it, like, the next day. But...
That makes sense. Oh, fascinating. But so, okay. You know, I see what you mean by the vibes, and I guarantee
you someone in the comments is going to write, like, a 5-paragraph thing about it, and that'll be cool.
If you do that, I would appreciate it, future person.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I think...
also, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think you seem very right. I've never thought about it this way, but I think you're right. Like, having those vibes are, for a game like this especially, where so much of it is going to be just playing the game post-game and appreciating the environments, having that feeling and vibes and lore and setting are more important than a point A to point B story.
Oh yeah, the optimization is terrible, but the environments are gorgeous.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you've convinced me. It's still upsets me how long low rank was and having those auto scrollers.
Yeah.
I recall being frustrated every time we had to do those things. We were free for most of high rank, and then we just have one more throws us at the end where we're getting back to Arkveld, and it's like,
Yeah.
not again.
Yeah. I don't, outside of the PCATS challenge I mentioned, I don't want to fight Arkveld again. I am so tired of that fucking fight.
Yep.
But yeah, I will say on the topic of like the lore and story and stuff though, one big mistake I think that they made during this is that in terms of like the like world building, especially like the areas being gorgeous and like the very intentional design they make of the environments, you don't really explore those anymore because you can just press a button and your sacred runs to the monster.
Yeah, okay, it's not only that. It's that, and so many of the places that you can explore, you have to use the Sacred. So many shortcuts rely on the Sacred, like, auto-platforming for you,
Yep.
as well.
I think it's
Like,
fun when it jumps
rises.
around between rocks and stuff, but yeah.
That's... Yeah. I think that's what frustrates me, though, because, you have to use the Sacred, and you have to watch this fast animation of crawling down rocks, at least in Rise and Sunbreak, when there were these platforming segments or whatever else, you'd have to do that manually.
Oh yeah, and like the mobility you had personally in Sunbreak and Rise was really cool. Like your ninja running and all of that kind of stuff was really nice.
Yeah. I can see why people criticized it, but I
Oh,
can
for
also
sure. It's very not
think
Monster
there's-
Hunter, but
Yeah, yep. But it had advantages over the auto-scroller that we've got when we're moving from place to place.
oh yeah, no, definitely. And I'm definitely not biased being like a huge Kuro Games fan and Wuthering Waves letting me run on the walls because Genshin is so fucking slow with mobility. and then they fucking lock the mobility quality of life behind the new characters.
Oh no. Oh, so yeah. Outside of What's Popular then, what sort of games are you playing a bunch now? So mostly gachas.
Yeah,
and
largely
stuff like that?
gachas, probably because I play too many gachas, so most of my like free gaming time is taken up by gachas. And I don't.
Of
I'm
which
just-
there seems to be a huge variety.
yeah. So like I didn't get into gacha games until Genshin. I wasn't even familiar with them as a genre, much like most of the vast majority of the Western world wasn't really familiar with gachas until Genshin blew the fuck up. But then
Yep.
like after I dropped Genshin, because I was obviously like the like latter half or whatever of my career on YouTube was doing Genshin stuff, and a lot of things I would do differently if I were to go back to that now. But like there was just so many things that was making the entire job so unhealthy for me because of how I handled things and how like I approached things that I ended up quitting. But I basically haven't touched Genshin since I quit, with the exception of when I saw Alakino's design because a friend pinged it to me. It's like, hey, look, red-eyed white-haired woman, your favorite. I went on, found that I still had like 400 something pulls somehow. And then just like, okay, I'm just gonna get Arlecchino and her weapon. And then I got Arlecchino, and then getting her weapon, they added like this new system, right, where you can like quote unquote chart to get the weapon, where if you lose like 50-50 twice, you get on the third one. And I thought I enabled that. Then I rolled my third one and I lost 50-50 for a third time. I was like, wait a second, what happened? And apparently you have to actually like click on the confirm button, not just click on the option you want, because I'm good at reading. Words are easy or something. And so I burned like all of my polls. I had like 20 polls left from like the 450 I started with by the end of that. Then I was like, okay, let me give Genshin another try. Did like the first 10 minutes of like main story. I'm like, wow, this is like the most mid writing that MiHoYo has ever done. I'm good. Uninstall.
You think it's been getting worse over time, or?
With Genshin, I don't know. From what I hear from my friends who still play Genshin, it has improved. But since I quit Genshin, I first picked up PGR afterwards, Punishing Grey Raven, which is the game previously made by Kuro Games, who now also make Wuthering Waves. Part of why I also hype about it is because of my experience with PGR and how they're just one of the relatively better developers in terms of like listening to like community criticism and stuff. I mean, the whole anniversary drama it's happening right now is a whole different thing. But anyway, I did start playing also Honkai Star Rail, Star Rail as well as ZZZ, and I could yap for like, I think I did yap for like 40 minutes about this on stream the other day, but like ZZZ is out of the modern MiHoYo games, so everything from Genshin later, it is by far the best one in my opinion. It actually has... This is a really hot take. ZZZ in my opinion, has a much higher skill ceiling than Wuthering Waves does, and that is going to like... that every Wuthering Waves, and probably most ZZZ fans are gonna like fucking dogpile on me for saying that, but realistically it does. If you look at some of like the truly hard pushing mechanical like speedruns, it's not really speedruns because it's more just max damage in 3 minutes for Deadly Assault, but if you look at what they do in there, there is so much advanced tech, and just based purely on its systems, it has a higher skill ceiling than Wuwa. Because they both have a like swap canceling thing where you can like swap, you can like do an animation, then swap to another character, and your character will finish the animation on field. That's like a big part of like Wua's design, and also lesser so for ZZZ's design, but it does exist. The difference is though that in ZZZ, when you swap off, the character that is finishing the animation can still get hit, so the timing you do it is very important. While in Wuwa they have iframes, and that's actually part of the tech in the game, is for unsafe longer animation attacks you swap cancel so they can be guaranteed to land it. And skill floor is definitely higher in Wuwa because there's like learning the perfect dodge is very important in Wuwa, and ZZZ's skill floor is like yellow flash happens, press swap button, hit things. Okay, it's dead now. Like, it's very approachable game. But the reason why I say that its skill ceiling is higher, and if you look at some of these like really high scoring Deadly Assault runs, you can see the tech in action, is that Wuwa has a global cooldown for swapping. You can't swap again for at least 1 second. The only cooldown that exists in ZZZ for swapping is that you can't swap back to the character who is like finishing their animation you swap canceled off of until they're done with the animation and retreat. But you can do double swaps, like immediate double swaps. So a lot of like the min-maxing tech in the game would be doing like, let's say you have like your carry do a really long animation, then you immediately swap to the next character who's a support, you buffer an attack on them, and then 5 frames later you swap to the next person and then buffer an attack on them. And there's like tech you can do like that like, I mean, you're overlapping all of your like damage uptime and skill uptime, so you're significantly increasing your DPS by doing these kinds of more advanced techs. And there's really advanced rotations for a lot of the characters that people think are simple as well. Like, there's so much mechanical depth and complexity. I think it's genuinely MiHoYo's best ever combat system. And the writing is so good. The community is by far the most wholesome because there's a lot of gooners in the game. Like, it is weird how wholesome gooner communities are compared to like a lot of other gacha communities, but there's a lot of toxicity and drama. And to me, it feels like out of all their games, that it is other than Honkai Impact 3rd, the one before Genshin, which is I also play. Other than like Honkai Impact 3rd and Gungo Z, which is Honkai Gakuen 2, which is their even older game that's still actually alive. That out of all of them, it feels like it strikes me as the one that definitely has like the most like love, passion, and artistry in it, and feels the least like they're making choices as like money, as like just money milking sort of things, right? As like business choices, because it's like the new IP property that they actually really wanted to make. For those who don't know, Genshin was an accident.
Wait, was it?
No, Genshin was an accident. The only reason Genshin exists is because MiHoYo wanted to apply for the Chinese stock market. But they were advised that if they want to apply for the stock market, they need more than one IP. So they went, okay, we were working on this Honkai, like, Breath of the Wild giant, like, large game. If you look at, like, some of the really, really early, like, alpha stuff, you can actually still see a lot of Honkai assets in there. But like they're like, okay, well, let's make a new IP so we have a better chance of getting in the stock market. So that's why Genshin was born. Like, the entire world and setting and everything of Genshin was born because of that. And in my opinion, it kind of seems to me like MiHoYo kind of resents it for that because it's what made them huge and is the big money maker. But it's definitely not the IP they love. You can definitely see a lot of that with Honkai Star Rail and how they treated Honkai Star Rail initially. The past few patches have been a lot more questionable for a variety of reasons. But you can definitely see like how differently they treat it, and especially if you play Honkai Impact, you can see how much more of like their like darling child Honkai Impact is. It does not make much money. It is basically funded by Genshin Impact and Star Rail and ZZZ.
But so it's their
but in terms of
it's
like
their passion project too.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's 100% the passion project because the Honkai setting is their baby. Like Honkai Impact 3rd is the 3rd game in the Honkai series, technically the 4th if you count that like very, very first gacha game. Like they have like they made They made one older one I forget the name of. They had Honkai Gakuen 1, Honkai Gakuen 2, then Honkai Impact 3rd, and then Honkai Star Rail. So we're looking at 5 different games in the same universe. But like I said, Genshin was kind of more of an accident. It definitely does not seem like it was like we want to make a new IP and this is what we're making. It's more like, oh, we have to make a new IP. I guess let's just do like, we're doing a Breath of the Wild game, so let's just do like Western fantasy inspired stuff, I guess. And then with ZZZ, it's very clear to me at least that from like how they handle it, there's like, oh no, this is the IP we truly wanted to make, and we are going to differentiate it from our other IPs in a variety of ways. And like that's a big part of it. Like the animation style is very different. It's much more like Western animation principles, like squash and stretch, like much more like less anime and more like subtle cartoony animations happening a lot of the time. It's still very anime, don't get me wrong, but like there's a concept in animation, there's like a fundamental in animation called squash and stretch, which you see a lot in like Disney stuff and Pixar stuff, where they kind of like visibly deform squash and stretching. There's a lot of that in the animations in ZZZ. The way they present things is very different. The amount that they really put into like the story, and they put into like the story into how they present the story, especially because they do kind of like a more dynamic visual novel comic style thing for a lot of the story presentation. Like it's just it feels to me like it's actually a game that they truly feel like they want to make. And Star Rail is that to some extent, but it definitely has a lot more of that kind of like money business decision things happening in it as well.
So then, say you had to recommend one game, one gacha game with the minimal spending to this Monster Hunter-based community, would that be HSR, ZZZ, or
for Monster Hunter community? Definitely ZZZ or WUWA. Honestly, probably WUWA. If you're looking at like something more along the lines of Monster Hunter, WUWA's definitely much more along those lines combat-wise, because ZZZ, like I said, has a really high mechanical ceiling, but it isn't like super like boss fight heavy, I guess. Does that make sense? Like Deadly Assault is like the end game mode that you push just for like flex and challenge, and like the challenge of it, right? And it's the one I was talking about with all this mechanical tech. And it is against a single boss, but it's not really like the big focus. In WUWA, on the other hand, like the primary focus of the combat ultimately does come down a lot to boss fights and to learning your team's matchup in the boss fights and everything. And all of that. In terms of like free to play, I mean, all of the bigger ones, including like all those MiHoYo ones and WUWA, aren't nearly as friendly as like a lot of the other gacha space is for like the smaller niche ones. But in terms of like, I mean, you can still do very well with like relatively free to play stuff. Sanhua, who is like the free to play A rank 4-star, whatever you want to say, depending on game character, is absurdly strong support, like top tier in the game still, beating out a lot of the like limited banner ones outside of like the niche cases. And then a lot of the standard characters are very good. You get a free one anyway, and like a whole bunch, like they are definitely more generous than like most of the other MiHoYo games that aren't ZZZ are. However, there is like a very recent controversy happening over the anniversary patch that's coming out in 2 days, which is why I'm going to be streaming WUWA after this, because I need to burn through my content before the patch happens.
Should I ask about that? Do they just like nerf everything, or?
No. So like, their anniversary is like fairly generous, but the big issue is that in this most recent, like, Genshin's first anniversary was comically bad. Like, absolutely comically bad. We still meme about it because they literally, like, this is an anniversary, right? You normally expect, like, a bunch of, like, gifts and things like that, right? That's just standard in, like, the gacha space. They gave us 3 poles and a glider skin. And, like, it was comical how bad the anniversary was. It was a huge thing. And they still remained bad, but in the most recent anniversary for Genshin, they gave the community a free standard 5-star. And then also in Honkai Star Rail, they gave a free 5-star that's either standard or 2 really good characters that are in like this kind of like special shop. And you can even save the thing for like a future character, which is what I'm personally doing. But like, basically, because of that precedent set, now in like the mainstream gacha culture, which is ultimately the MiHoYo culture and the MiHoYo community, right? They just make up the mainstream now because they introduced so many new people into just Genshin and MiHoYo games. Who then joined the gacha space. So like, the main perception now is that the expectation is you get a free 5-star or free like max rank character as part of the anniversary now, despite the fact that they never did it before. But now Wu was doing their Annie, and they didn't do that, so the entire community is like going fucking crazy about it. Admittedly, they could be a little bit more generous. But yeah, it's a lot of Wu went through a really rough version 1. Like I was heavily disappointed and dropped it for like 2 months early on, and then they kind of progressively got better. They listened to a lot of player feedback, and they were incredibly generous in that first year, and also generous in like the second year. Well, this is gonna be version 2.3, so we've already had 2.2 or 2.3. We've had a few patches already, and 2.0 was like a literal renaissance for Wuwa. It got significantly better, and it really showed Kuro flexing their writing skills, because Punishing Grey Raven is one of the best written games I've ever played, and Wuwa did not have that early on. It was not, the writing was not good. But yeah, they really did a huge amount there. They released the game for PS5 that brought a bunch of new blood in, so like they really had like this massive redemption arc, and now people are like, all of that goodwill is now dead because of the anniversary live stream. They did give us like an extra 30 polls now as like in response, but a lot of community still doesn't think that's enough, so I guess we'll see how things go. I wouldn't be surprised if they added more unknown anniversary rewards or something, and it's not like they have given us like a free 5-star like twice in the past if you started playing the first version. Okay, one of them being limited. But yeah, I don't know, it's a thing. But either way, like you were asking, for Monster Hunter, I would definitely say Wuwa is going to be the best if what you care about is like skill-intensive boss fights kind of things. That's really what monster fights are in Monster Hunter, right?
Wuthering Waves.
Yeah.
What? Interesting. Good to know. Maybe one day I should give that a shot.
It's a lot of fun.
The only gacha I've really played is Fire Emblem Heroes.
Yeah, you mentioned, yeah. Which is definitely one of the like older school like non-mainstream crowd games, because like still over half, like most of the games I play for the gacha space aren't like the big, popular MiHoYo Wuwa ones, but
right. Yeah. Is there anything else that we've been missing out? We had a list of questions.
Yeah. So
I think we've covered most things.
The main thing from Monster Hunter was the question of favorite monster I'm seeing on here.
Oh yeah. What is your favorite monster?
That's gonna require a think. Despite what people might think, it's definitely not Kulve Roth. I resent her so much now after all. I have fought Kulve Roth for like at least over 500 hours at this point between speedrunning and all the other stuff. Like, oh my god, it's not Kulve Roth for sure. But bitch traumatized me.
Let's put into sections then. One in Wilds and one in general.
Okay. So for Wilds, probably still Raidao. I just find the Raidao fight really fun. It's fun, it's dynamic, it is like the right pace where it doesn't feel too twitchy, but it's not Uthdana. Udra is a pretty close second, but like I do think Raidao is just kind of generally speaking the better design fight.
Makes sense.
And that's also why I'm so excited for Octeped Raidao, personally. Out of all the Apexes, I definitely think it's the best one out of all of them. I do also have a real soft spot for Guardian Rathlos, though, just because the Rathlos fight is so classic, and also because it's just hilarious dunking him out of the air.
That is true. Rathlos, yeah, they really knocked it out of the park, like, on their first try.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Rathlos is amazing.
Yeah, flagship monster for a reason.
Yeah.
In general?
In general, who would you go to?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a harder one. I will say, in terms of pure fight and mechanics, I really loved Behemoth a lot. And getting a solo Behemoth run was a lot of fun. Yeah, because it was like, for me at least, it was a fun like research process for the fights. Versus, like...
Earlier today, you were just talking about how you don't like the multiplayer-focused fights, and then you go with extreme.
I like soloing Behemoth. I'm one of those psychos.
But that is a monster that was designed for multiplayer, explicitly.
I mean, it is,
right?
But I feel like other than, like, the massive amount of HP inflation, I think it does actually translate pretty well into a solo experience.
Okay.
Relatively.
I've never tried a solo extreme off.
Yeah, you should not. Like, most people shouldn't. I'm just psychotic masochist. But I think especially because it was fun doing the research into it, because like, day one I was figuring out the jump timings for iframing the meteor and everything. And like teaching it to a bunch of speedrunner friends, but also I just found the fight generally speaking pretty fun and engaging. But outside of that, because that's like a really weird niche case for me of just like me specifically liking solo Behemoth runs. Let's see. In World, especially in the initial world, it definitely was Nergigante, but if I had to pick one in general, it'd probably be Odogaron and Odogaron variants.
Oh, really?
I find the Odogaron fight incredibly fun, and it's similar to Nergigante, where it heavily rewards aggressive play while still avoiding, like, you know, a lot of, like, very quick attacks that are all telegraphed, but, like, punish you for, like, sudden overcommitments. I think the fight is just generally speaking very well designed. It is a fast fight, but it's not insanely twitchy. But it is one of the faster and better fast fights in the game. Every single attack Odo has is a very fair move. Like there aren't really any attacks where it's like, wow, this is like actually bullshit to deal with defensively. Because there's all the fast fights like Tobakadachi, where there's definitely attacks that you're like, wow, this is. I basically am forced to, like, hard roll out of the AoE or have, like, a parry to be able to deal with this. Every single one of Odogaron's moves are very realistically iframeable. Which is really nice.
That's true.
Also, I just have this huge soft spot for Switch X against Odogaron because there is this hilarious exploit in World.
Which is?
So, like, Switch X is one of the few weapons that actually likes swinging into multiple corpses and multiple enemies, because every enemy you hit triggers an extra file burst. And your file bursts are AoE. It's a small AoE, but an AoE. So when you get a monster to, like, stand on top of a bunch of small monster corpses and swing, you can have, like, you have basically, like, dead monsters times file bursts happening. If you get a pile of, like, a pile of 4 dead monsters on top, or the dead small monsters on top of each other, and fight the monster on it, you are getting 5 times as much file damage per swing. It's hilarious. You're shredding your sharpness, but, you know, Master's Touch was a thing in World anyway. But there's a particular exploit where, like, in Odogaron's primary fighting arena, in the Rotten Vale, was it? I believe it's called? In World, it's been a while.
Yes, yeah.
In his, like, specific fighting area where he goes to sleep, and it's kind of like the main place you, like, fight him over there, right? It's like the little circular cave with, like, this sort of, like, cave entrance, right? With, like, a little, with, like, this little empty area in the center, and then, like, sleeping area in the back and all that shit. So on this entrance, there is, I believe it was a thunderbug sitting on the wall. And a funny exploit in World is that bugs, like bugs that are on the environment, also trigger extra file procs. So, like, to
you
truly...
just keep hitting this bug.
Yeah, and, like, the thing about Odogaron, that's what I like about him so much, is that, like, similar to the Gigante, if you play aggressively and, like, react and play around his, like, aggressive moveset well, you can trip him very easily. But unlike Nergigante, you just beat his spikes you just kind of beat him in general, and he'll trip eventually because of spike break. But with Odogaron, you have to specifically be targeting, like, the arms and everything. The legs, rather, to trip him. So if you could manage to get the Odo to trip next to that bug, you would have, like, a 15% DPS increase swinging through it. And it was, like, such a fun little, like, optimization, like, game plan thing on that fight specifically, was trying to get this Odo to fight next to the bug on the entrance.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was really funny. But in general, I just think Odos are incredibly well-designed fights, especially because, like, it's one of the ones where, like, I feel like it has a good floor to entry, because he is pretty fast, but because he doesn't really have any bad hit zones, it means that you don't have to be as disciplined, right? You have to be, like, as skilled with, like, hit zone focusing to be able to clear him fairly fast. It's really more of a, can I not get the murder check than anything else? But I also think that because he has multiple weak points, it allows you a lot more flexibility to be able to, like, decide how you want to do flinches, trips, that kind of a thing, breaks and all of that stuff.
Right. I think casually my issue with Odogaron was just I did not like bleed as a status effect.
Okay, yeah, that's the main thing. I dislike bleed, but, you know, I don't apply this to anyone else. Like, I'm not saying this to anyone else. This is purely my own toxic self-criticism. But if I get hit by something that can bleed me, it's a skill issue, and I just have to not get hit next time.
Yeah, makes sense. No, I get that. Yeah.
It's kind of how I approach Monster Hunter in general. It's like, yeah, I could probably do this thing better, but also just don't get hit, forehead. Just play press the button better, Jinx.
Yeah, I guess so. I think I agree in principle. Because the weird thing about bleed, it's you have 2 options. You either shut down the fight for like 5 seconds.
Yep.
Use the item where you're never going to be carrying most of the time, or 3. Just keep on attacking the monster and
just don't get hit again.
Be sad.
Don't get hit again.
Sad as your fight drops. Or, like, which I can see is good decision making. Like, I can see that as good gameplay design.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I personally care for, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
no, I definitely get it. I dislike the bleed too. It's just the bleed was even more incentive for me to get better at the fight, so I just don't get hit by the bleed attacks.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Huh.
Yep. I will say also, as a kind of a classic fight, in general, like the Rathians are fairly funny to fight, just because I think they're good fights because of how, like, relatively scriptable they are. So it's definitely a fight that a lot of more casual players can kind of learn to master too, because like the very telegraphed tail whip is very telegraphed and very set in pattern wise, and is very much something people can react to realistically and counterattack off of, and it feels good.
That is true. Yeah, earlier today I was going through the weeklies.
Yeah.
And I had to do the Rathian Arena with a sword and shield solo. And, guarding the tail slam was definitely something that was... Okay, I guess there's still transfers from the longsword and the counters.
Oh, for sure,
but
yeah.
having never, guarded with a sword and shield before felt like a good experience.
Oh, for sure, yeah. No, I mean, perfect guarding is pretty satisfying in this game, too.
Yep.
And offensive guard is a busted weapon skill. It's absurd
Absolutely.
how good it is. It's funny, though, because, Charge Blade with Savage Axe basically just needs to run Crit Boost 5, and then they have an open slot. Magazine seems nice, but because you rarely ever have to fill files on Savage Axe, it's not really that good. And so it's like, okay, what else do I put in there? I guess Offensive Guard, but Offensive Guard lasts 12 seconds, and Optimal's Charge Blade Savage Axe playstyle is you are in shield mode as little as possible, so you don't generally get to have it active that much.
Someone told me you need magazine. You need to max up magazine on the charge blade.
If you're doing SAED style, you have to, yes.
Oh, right, yeah.
For
Okay,
SAED
yes,
style,
sure.
you have to. But for Savage Axe style, no, because part of the big reason why Savage Axe is so much stronger in Wilds compared to Ice One, other than just motion value changes, is because now when you have your Savage Axe active, you don't burn files except for on AED and SAED. So basically, if you're not doing SADs, which you don't really do in Savage Axe playstyle, you don't lose your files until either you somehow drop your Savage Axe maintenance, which is required to do wound attacks, or Perfect Guard. So, with Perfect Guard the roll or something, and then you just keep it up with wound attacks, because holy shit, is Charge Blade so good at making wounds. But then you basically just keep it up. You don't run out of files until you do 5 AEDs, which is a lot. That you don't normally do that many in a single hunt.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
So now I know magazine not always necessary for the charge blade.
Yeah, I mean for SAD styles it's absolutely necessary because they also added overcharge files, so you would otherwise have to full charge files twice to get overcharge files for more damage, but you can just charge them once with magazine and you'll be fine.
Fancy.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that was favorite monster. We talked about non-Monster Hunter video games. Although I guess on the note of the gacha games, I spent so much time talking about and glazing the really big mainstream ones. But still probably my favorite two gacha games that are definitely smaller, more niche are Arknights, especially because they just released Lapland Alter Laptop, who is literally the reason I started playing the game was her being announced in CN and being like, okay, I've been wanting to try this for a while. Let's actually play this game.
Why is so exciting for you?
Oh yeah, no, very exciting. I love Lapland. She is a very well done, interesting take on the crazy psycho character. And very interesting take on the crazy psycho yandere, because they're obsessed with their rival Texas, who is kind of the poster child of Arknights, despite not being the actual main main girl in Arknights, which is I love that one. The writing's really good. For the most part, there's definitely some cases where it's wow, I yap a lot, and I could have condensed this down from 20 paragraphs into 3. Halsted, I love you. You're the Uber hag. Shut the fuck up, please. But the gameplay is very fun. The designs are great. The voice acting is incredible, because all the operators are from different parts of the world, and they actually have good accents. It's on the same tier as Reverse 1999 in that case for the most part. There's some bad cases, but a lot of them are incredibly good. Yeah, and it's a good game. It's a good game. It's fairly free-to-play friendly. You can't get everyone, but like they give you a good amount of pulls and everything. And yeah, it's a good game. The other one is Path to Nowhere, which literally fucking no one outside of China knows about. I have met one other Path to Nowhere fan in the wild, and that was a fan artist doing Path to Nowhere fan art at an anime convention. So doesn't really count. But that one has legitimately probably the best writing I've ever experienced in a video game. It has even better voice acting somehow, despite having... It's like a massive cult hit in China, but it has like literally no global audience. Like, I'm amazed that they invest in the quality of voice actors they do for global, because like one of the main girls, like you have like the two like main girls that are like kind of your sidekicks in the main story, and one of them is voiced by Brianna Knickerbocker, who, by the way, is the voice of Hu Tao and Rem, and just a whole bunch of really big name, like, iconic female characters. Yeah, so it's wild that they do that, but, like, it's very big in China. In fact, in the 2024, or was it 2023 Weibo Game Awards, which is, like, the big game awards in China, they made it into the same top 10 games of 2023 category as League of Legends, right alongside them. And my favorite character from there, Shalom, who is basically if Makima was written much, much better and instead like very intelligently and maturely manipulated adult women and not just grooming a teenager, haha, Chainsaw Man. But she won the best female character in gaming at that Weibo Awards as well, and she's just so incredibly well written and voice acted. Like, she is like the best mastermind manipulator character I've ever personally consumed in media.
Wow. Of all games was the first what the awards was for?
What I'm currently playing, then yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. Fancy.
Yeah. It's also a very difficult tower defense game. So
okay.
it is not.
For some reason, I don't know it's a tower defense game.
Yeah, I mean, in an Arknights are both tower defense game. It's very clearly heavily influenced by Arknights, but has a very different formula in terms of the tower defense aspects of it.
Huh.
And it's also incredibly generous. Like, they give you a stupid amount of pulls. They give you someone who is still T0, like Uber God tier, for free as part of your first like 10-day event, or 10-day event as a new account. Huge amount of absurd amount of pulls. Very like good gacha rates too. You don't get enough to like guarantee, because they also do like the 50-50, 80-50 thing. But like the base rate is a 2% roll. So it's very realistic to actually get early copies and accidental copies of things versus Genshin's 0.07% base roll.
Oh,
it's
terrible.
And like Genshin's, like the Mihoyo games don't even get better until you hit 70 rolls. Like that's, I believe 65 or 70 is when they actually start to curve upwards, while Path to Nowhere starts curving upward, I think, at 30 rolls, which is a bit more normal for gacha games.
Okay.
It's not normally that bad, but anyway.
Huh. Fancy. Lots of gacha games.
Yeah, I've been really into gacha.
Perhaps I should give more of a shot too. Makes sense. Yeah. How
about yourself? What's your favorite non-Monster Hunter video game?
What would I say? It depends on my mood. I think my top 3 games that I always say I have are like 1, Breath of the Wild, because I'm basic.
I mean, good game's a good game.
It's a good game. It feels weird that being like the top
for a reason.
Yep. And then my 2 off-kilter ones are Rune Factory 4, which I love.
Let's go.
And farming game, relaxing. It's and the combat and the gameplay is surprisingly good for what it is initially a 3DS game. Like it basically plays as if 2D Monster Hunter, I would almost say.
Oh.
And a lot of the mechanics are similar. Like bosses stagger, and whatever else. Like you need to. There's a lot you can do in that game, and it's also a farming. I don't know. It's nice and relaxing, and it's a really good story.
Oh yeah, and I have a soft spot for farming games. I mean, obviously, I like spreadsheets.
Yep. And rounding out my top 3 would be Xenoblade Chronicles X. Which is a weird option. Even among Xenoblade Chronicles is a JRPG series, which is not a big one.
I was about to say it's a classic
by any
JRPG
means.
series. I think I remember
I wouldn't
played
even
one game way back in the day, but I don't even remember which one it was.
I wouldn't even call it classic because the first one released on the Wii, which is newish for me at least.
Oh yeah.
And
well, I'm 32, so Wii was like literally middle school for me.
Okay, fine. I'm like slightly younger than you, but yeah. And then Xenoblade Chronicles X is everyone's least favorite Xenoblade game, typically.
Gotcha.
But it's my favorite personally. I just love the story and the vibes and the everything about it. It feels like a game that was perfectly designed for me in some sense. No clue how that ended up working out. I just think the story and the vibes. What you were saying about the lore building in Wilds?
Yeah.
I feel like that they do that, in my opinion, perfectly in Xenoblade X, even if the story itself is not very
Nice.
good.
Yeah, you were saying that
But
you're saying for most of the community, like it's not their favorite one. Why do you think that is?
So, the first game in the series was Xenoblade Chronicles 1, which was very story focused. Great characters. It was, you could call it a typical but good JRPG. Xenoblade Chronicles X was a spin-off of that, and it was, I think, possibly designed to be an MMO. So, like halfway through, I think they decided to make an MMO. So it went from having great characters, great story,
Okay.
to a silent protagonist, where you can't really do anything. So going from everyone's expectation of great story to nothing was not
Gotcha.
really much at all. So I think that's the big reason. The gameplay, and then later games revert back to the original in the style. So yeah, I think it sort of was the spin-off Black Sheep, and they never recovered off of that.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's also, the other games of the series are much more fantasy, and this one is like pure sci-fi. So there's even that genre change. So yeah. Oh,
So would you say that
No,
like
no,
those are
Xenoblade-
kind of like your favorite of all time, not just like currently playing or would currently play?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I would call them my favorite of all time. I think they've survived long enough to not be recency bias.
Yeah.
And new enough to be modern games that are developed based on like modern tastes and whatever else.
Yeah.
I love Ocarina of Time, but recommending Ocarina of Time to a 5-year-old now.
It's a little challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Games have evolved quite a bit compared to some of the olden days games.
Yes. I'd rather recommend the
Majora's
5-year-old play Breath
Mask
of the
was
Wild
really
than
cool
Ocarina
and
of Time.
dark. I would not recommend anyone to play it at this point.
Exactly.
Oh my god, the controls
Yeah.
are so jack.
I tried playing Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time on the Switch Online, and that was
Yeah.
an experience. Great experience, but also just an experience at
It
some
was
point in
certainly
time.
an experience. Yeah. I do think the time loop concept was really interesting in that one in particular.
So good.
Yeah. Because I guess like with like the favorite games part, like what I'm talking about right now, it's like what I'm currently playing. But if I had to pick like a
Right.
single game that was my favorite of all time and like very important to me personally, it'd definitely be the original Dark Souls. Not
really?
only because of like, I mean, there's a reason why like Souls-like is now like an entire genre, and it was revolutionary for the industry at the time because it really taught it at the time in mainstream gaming, especially in AAA. It was very much like a very hand-holding, please everyone kind of like
Right.
mainstream industry at the time. And Dark Souls kind of came in and went, now we're gonna make the players suffer, and they are going to earn their victories. And that was but they did it in a very good way because Dark Souls. People always say Dark Souls is hard. I contest that. I think they're conflating hard with punishing. It is not. Dark Souls games, like a Dark Soul, getting a no-hit Dark Soul fight compared to a no-hit on Monster Hunter is significantly easier. It has almost twice the iframes per roll. But it's very punishing. When you fuck up in Dark Souls, it makes you know that you did. It is very hard to heal. You are suddenly still having to deal with all of these attacks and kind of maybe in panic mode. You get punished really hard for panic rolling. If you die, you now have to make it back to where you were before just to keep all of your stuff. Like it's very punishing. Which I
So
think
my
people
complaints about
conflate with
Odo-Garen.
that. Yeah, but like I mean,
My
I've done,
complaints with
like-
Odo-Garen or nothing.
Yep, basically. And maybe that's actually part of why I like Odogaron so much, but also just personally, it's like a very important series to me because there's this really good video by, it's now called Daryl Talks Games, but his channel used to be, what was it, like Daryl Talks like psychology or something to do with because he has a psychology degree and he kind of approaches talking about games and concepts from that angle. But he has a video that was like, I guess really helped me understand why the Dark Souls series Dark Souls 1 in particular
Right.
is so important to me, because it's called How Souls Games Save You, and it kind of talks about how for a lot of people who were in very dark times, especially this, even though it was like, very punishing, hard, whatever, right? For a lot of people, myself included, in very dark times, it actually like kind of helped save us, or like helped us like bring us out of that like period in our life and whatnot. Because like, I mean, there's a few cases he talks about in the video that are like this, but like for me personally, like I was at a really, when I first played Dark Souls, I was in a really dark, difficult time of my life, and that was further exacerbated by my like completely unmanaged, now I know is bipolar disorder at the time. So it was a really, really bad time of my life. Lots of issues with self-worth, self-criticism. I already still have issues with those, but significantly worse at the time, and various other bad things I probably shouldn't talk about. But
Sure,
the
fair
point
enough.
is, like, yeah, very bad time. And then playing Dark Souls basically it taught me and reminded me that I can do hard things. Because Dark
right.
Souls is a game that is very, like, the reason why people like it so much, and the reason why they get such big dopamine hits and all of that, is because the fights feel a lot more fair than other bullshit you have in other similar kinds of like genre games like Devil May Cry and Ninja Gaiden, and it also only has the one difficulty level, so there is this like shared experience of success where it's not like, oh, I beat this on easy mode or whatnot, and so therefore I didn't do as good of a job as someone who beat it on like hard mode or whatever. I think that's part of why like the intentional design to not have difficulty settings in the Souls games is part of the artistry of the Souls games. And was a very intentional choice by Miyazaki, because he wanted it to be like that community experience, like we all managed to beat this boss the way it is. But like it has like you have this difficult grind of like continually dying and losing and all of these things, but you learn and you progress and you keep pushing forward, and then eventually when you finally beat the thing that beat the end or the boss that was challenging you so much, like it feels incredible. It feels very earned, and like the lack of difficulty settings in that is, I think, a huge part of that. And it like in that really dark time where I was just filled with like so much self-doubts and the most negative self-image basically fucking possible, it reminded me that I can do hard things and that I can put in the work and I can get better at things, and it's a lot of what helped kind of pull me out of those times and start working on myself and growing and healing.
That's really interesting. And you think that was mostly in the gameplay of Dark Souls as opposed to the vibes and story, or do you think it's all of that together that gives you that?
It is largely the gameplay design, but the original Dark Souls is particularly interesting because in terms of like the story, quote unquote, and the lore and the general design of it, another reason why I like it so much is that it does an incredibly good job, perhaps a uniquely good job, at least in some aspects, of mimicking the experience of the player character with the experience of the player.
Right.
Especially on your first time around, because like in the original Dark Souls, the concept is that you are an undead, and in this world, all undead when they die will come back to life again. Like they will come back to life. That's how the undead work. But eventually, and most of the enemies you fight are what are called hollows, where they are basically those who kept coming back to life and eventually gave up on it. They gave up on like whatever their purpose or whatever their goal was or whatnot, and then they become basically mindless zombies. And the thing is, like, your character is like the quote-unquote chosen undead, but you're still just an undead at the end of the day. And the only way for your character to ever truly become a hollow is if you literally give up yourself and stop playing the game. And you can also see this concept in a lot of the NPCs, where like Solaire is like probably the most, like one of the two most well-known NPCs. He's like the praise the sun guy who kind of like T-poses.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Solaire's story is particularly interesting because if like Dark Souls also has like very like arcane systems behind how you do the side quests, but I think that makes it even more rewarding when you manage to do them naturally. Because there's no like actual quest logs, there's no quest things, you just kind of talk to a person at this time and place, do a thing that seems kind of unrelated, and then see them again at a different place. Like it's interesting because the NPCs all have their own personal journeys. Like it doesn't feel like they're just an NPC that you use for quests and whatnot. They have their own journeys that you influence in ways you might not realize, and it's really interesting design. But like Solaire, for example, his driving force was his light. Like he was looking for his personal sun. He was a knight of the sun, and he wanted to find his personal sun. And if you do certain things, he continues on this quest, and then never finds his son, but he's able to son again, as in like solar, not as in child. Then you don't, after a certain point you don't see him again, but you are able to summon him for the final boss fight because he's still there. He is still an undead pushing forward looking for his own son, and you can summon him because you can summon other souls and from possibly other timelines. It's kind of weird in the Souls games. So he can become part of the final boss fight for you if you want. But if you do certain other things and basically cause like a certain area to be unlocked when Solaire is traveling through that himself, instead he will actually find this creature which is basically like a face hugger from Alien. But is like a sun creature. It looks like a sun, and so then he finds his personal sun and puts it on, and now his mission is complete. And then he becomes hollow, and you have to kill him, and it's heartbreaking. And then he does not show up as a summon in the final fight again. And like,
so the whole point is that it's the struggle, then the search. That is what. So you would say that sort of the point of that is that the struggle and the search is part of the goal, and not.
Yeah,
finding
the yeah, no, like to some degree, yeah, like it was like with the NPCs and also the player, it's like you have to keep pushing forward, you have to keep struggling, and that's like a core part of just the idea behind Dark Souls. And so you have that similar thing with, as a player experience where you go, the only way your character can ever become hollow, become a mindless zombie that doesn't keep pushing forward, is if you literally stop playing the game, is if you give up. Like, that's the only way that you can actually become hollow. You can't become otherwise, like, truly a mindless zombie in the game, even when you start to look like one because you've lost your humanity, which is a resource mechanic thing. Way too long, sorry for that. But anyway, and they do an incredible job with that, with the character stories, and part of the reason why so many of these characters are, like, so iconic is because of how they feel like actual characters. They are going on their own journeys, and because of how tragic their ends are if you actually finish their quest lines. Because if you actually finish their quest lines, you get to see the moments where they gave up, and then you have to kill them. Or in one case, you have to walk up as their daughter who was searching for them has had to kill them because they went hollow. So like it makes like for the, like such an interesting character arc and journey for the characters, while never giving you like quest text or like exposition or like any of these things that kind of gamify it, so it just feels like a natural experience with like these truly like tragic ends. Yeah, and also like in general like part of the whole like mimicking the player's experience, at least the first time playing, is that your chosen undead knows nothing about this world, and neither do you. And there is never at any point where there's like there's like massive exposition drops or like a narrator explaining things. You are experiencing and seeing all of these places and all of these with different histories, all of these like hollows that were once like, you know, certain things historically in that area, or where these certain conflicts happen. You can see the signs of this naturally. And it does, like, one thing that Dark Souls does, people say the story is bad, which is pretty accurate because the plot is non-existent and not well explained, but the world building and lore is so great, and they do such a good job with expressing that, where you can like look at a place and then see that there's like a certain like enemy in this certain area over here that has a certain design, and be like, oh, this kind of looks like such and such, or maybe it's a such and such. And you see another thing later on, like, oh, maybe that related to this is related to that, and then you find out a little bit more about like the bosses and stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, all of this kind of works together and makes sense. Like it's like you're exploring, you're a stranger in a strange land, but the game also makes your character mimic that experience as you go through. As well as the player mimics that experience as they go through. And all of the, like, most of the lore and stuff is hidden behind item descriptions, which is the kind of interesting.
I heard about that, which is definitely, not a choice I would have gone with, but apparently, from what I've heard, seems to work.
I mean, it's one of the things that's kind of more, that was, like, very unique about Dark Souls at the time, right? And it's part of what made it succeed, was the fact that it was so much more immersive and arcane than, like, the current game industry landscape at the time, which is like very much like your like AAA, like massive tutorialization, play however you want to have like please everyone sort of approach, and also like the story being like very like thrown at you, and lots of exposition, lots of tutorializing. Dark Souls had none of that, and that's part of what made it so successful at the time and made it like literally industry changing.
Interesting. Did it come out before or after Near Replicant? Do you know?
I'm 90% before, but let me double check so I'm not making a fool of myself.
Like I probably should have when I was talking about Charm Haunted MHG.
Let's see.
I'll look up Near.
Yeah, September 22, 2011.
Okay, and Near Replicant was... I can't find it. 2010. So Near Replicant came out just before.
Oh yeah, for Near Replicant, yeah.
And Automata was way after that.
Yeah, Automata was way after. Yeah, with Replicant I knew that it was around the same time, but I couldn't remember because I didn't get into Near Replicant until after Automata.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I've never properly played either of them at this stage, although there's so many games that I want to go back and play.
Oh yeah, I mean, those are definitely ones worth doing.
Yep. And Dark Souls, like even a mate of mine.
Oh yeah.
A mate of mine bought me Dark Souls, so I never had a chance to actually play it yet.
Yeah, and the remaster is good. It doesn't really change anything that important, but just lots of quality of life and visual improvements and stuff like that.
In a good way? Like, as in the quality of life doesn't detract from the struggle.
So I haven't played
about?
it, but I've only heard good things from people who also have played the original Dark Souls.
That's good.
I mean, if you really want to just go with the OG, you can. There's really no reason not to. But there is like some
Fair
touch
enough.
of bugginess and stuff that happens sometimes in some situations. More than
Now I
anything,
told you
the
about how
remake's
Xenoblade-
probably going to have a much more active player base, relatively speaking, and that is kind of a big part of Dark Souls. Is like the whole mechanics of like you can leave messages on the ground that other players in different worlds or timelines or whatever. It's weird. Can see and they can be upvoted and whatnot. And a lot of the ones that are massively upvoted are just fucking memes. Like there's one gigantic goddess character who is like actually gigantic, and each of her tits is like the size of the character. And by far the most popular and famous message is one that says "Great chest ahead," because because that's preset. You can't write whatever you want. You have to use preset words and phrases.
Yeah. Nice. Yep. Oh, okay. I guess hopefully, maybe I'll try I will try the remastered someday.
Yeah.
Just not sure when I'll get to it.
The Dark Souls is also not
in.
that long. Like I've done a lot of
Sorry?
challenge runs and stuff for it, but even like a normal playthrough is like probably 20 minutes, 20 hours, 25 hours. Sorry.
So I could do it with like a committed weekend, basically.
Yeah, basically. Like, I mean, of course, it depends on like how much you decide to like explore and everything. It depends on like how long it takes you to do certain fights, because there's a lot of fights that are pretty consistently agreed upon as walls in the community. Kind of like how Anjanath was for Monster Hunter World.
Yes.
But there's a lot of them that are walls for some people. And Elden Ring fixed a lot of the issues, quote unquote, that Souls had, at least for like mainstream appeal, because like in Elden Ring, you can go around and if you really are struggling, you can go and like grab all of the extra Estus Flask stuff and have more healing items to like tackle the story with. You can't do that in Dark Souls. There is a good amount of like exploration and being able to go to different areas, but it's a fairly clear script of where you can go next. And if you're struggling on like the first wall boss, you can grind previous areas to level yourself up and be stronger, but you can't get extra healing items. There's also a limit to how strong you can make a weapon. In Elden Ring, if you like follow a guide and do it, you can get basically a maxed out weapon at the very beginning of the game if you're really struggling.
Oh wow. Okay.
But yeah.
More games for me to try.
Yeah, I mean, you also mentioned the Nier series. I think all three are very worth experiencing. Just because, if nothing else, they are very unique experiences in the game media landscape.
Yes, I've heard.
And
the Dragon Guards as well.
Yeah. they handle things very differently. They handle things very differently, but the way that they handle the story, and especially how they handle like their storytelling approach and how they break just the norm of storytelling in video games or movies or media in general, is really interesting. They make different very good uses of video games' unique capabilities to tell stories.
Yes, I've heard that. And I think that's sort of why I feel such appeal for Breath of the Wild specifically as well.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like having...
Yeah.
My weird one take with Breath of the Wild is that when you play the game for the first time, you're like Link in that you don't know anything that's well known in Hyrule.
Yep.
And you're exploring like somebody who, lost their memory after 100 years and is seeing everything for the first time. And then when you replay Breath of the Wild, you're playing like Link, who Just rewoke from 100 years after dying and just wants to get everything done with all the experience that you've kept.
Yeah,
which is
very similar to like how I was like how Dark Souls is in my view of things, which I think is incredible game design and something that like video games are very uniquely able to do.
Yes.
Every like
100%.
storytelling medium has different strengths, but I will still always argue that in terms of raw potential, video games have the highest potential for storytelling.
Yes, I agree. I feel like the potential.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I feel like the potential is not nearly reached at this stage.
Oh yeah,
with anything.
Basically, almost never.
We're very far from like any of that, and on average, right now, games are way worse than other more mature media.
Yeah,
but the potential,
for sure,
as we say,
yeah,
is crazy high.
No, but on average, especially for sure, because the other mediums are specifically storytelling mediums. Gaming is not always, and very rarely, that's the afterthought for the vast majority of the popular and big games.
Indeed. We've been talking for 3 hours.
This is a very long time now.
Probably...
Yeah, we should probably call it.
I feel like we talk for hours and hours and hours more.
I mean, we can always do this again if we want to keep talking, because there's very clearly some chemistry here. But
yes. Yeah, but we should probably close off now. I'm hungry.
Yeah, I've been holding in the piss for like 20 minutes right now.
And I still need to edit this stuff by tomorrow before I start working on it. So
gotcha. Yeah. Sorry that there's like a lot of yapping and tangents.
No. Please don't be.
I also have no problem if you just want to release the whole thing without any like edits as well. I don't really care. But
I'll listen through it and we'll see what. Yeah, none of us said any. Whatever. We'll see. I'll at least cut off the water break. We aren't going to be BKC.
Yep, cut off the water break. If you feel like editing out some of like the stumbles and stuff, that's an option. But like, I don't really have to. I don't really care if I don't really care if I have stumbles in there.
But yeah. Oh well, I'll give it a listen and then see how it goes tomorrow.
Of course.
But is there anything else you want to say before we close off?
Something self-shill. I'm JINJINX. Channel name currently is JinJinX and Tuner. Pretty much the only thing I do right now is I just occasionally will randomly stream. I will just occasionally randomly stream stuff that I find fun and spend half of the time actually playing the video game and half the time yapping about random bullshit because I'm really good at doing that.
It's fascinating though. Like I've been lurking on your streams a few times, like just not saying anything.
I mean, I think nice. I make pretty good second monitor content at the very least because I am very good at yapping about random bullshit.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah, but I guess I'm technically a #Ian VTuber right now. I am enjoying like VTubing and wanting to get more into it. But all I have right now is a PNG tuber that I made myself, and I could just get like commission an artist for it, but because I have I have a background in classical arts. I want to learn to make and rig my own. I have one of my friends, Wilt, who is a mod in my stream, and you'll see chatting in there sometime and whatnot. He has a master's in animation and special effects, so he's going to be teaching me about rigging and all of these different things and Live 2D and stuff. And I'd rather just make my own model than have someone else make it because I have the ability to and I want to learn how to do that. But yeah, I just stream randomly and occasionally. I'm thinking of setting up a stream schedule, maybe starting next week or the week after, but right now I just kind of go, okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit schedule stream for 45 minutes to an hour from now, and then maybe post about it on Twitter beforehand. Speaking of which, if you actually like want to otherwise like see updates about anything I'm doing, or just see random like gacha memes, Yuri posting, or just stupid random bullshit, or just random shit I yap about on text instead, like my Twitter's the only place I post anything at this point. Which is at Jinx Mathalos, I believe. You could just put that in the description or something to make it easier to click and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, otherwise, I want to be a bit more serious about streaming and like at least have a schedule and stuff like that. But at the moment, if you want to catch my streams, really the only two ways to do it are to like follow me on Twitter, but then even then it won't necessarily tell you. Or like you'd have to like check your notifications, or like go to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell, and then it'll at least let you know when like stream is coming out. Because I do try to post at least 45 minutes to an hour schedule beforehand.
A thing that I should be doing sometimes is rocking up with choppy frame rate.
Yep, I mean
on my own streams.
These are things that you iron out and work out, right? Like it is definitely a pro. I mean, just like I have to learn video editing stuff for YouTubing, you have to learn stream software stuff for streaming. It's just a process.
Yep.
You learn things eventually, and then another thing breaks, and you learn how to fix that as well, etc., etc.
I'll get there.
Yeah.
Oh well. I guess that should. Here I am feeling somewhat tired. How much does it close this off? How much does it close off the stream?
Well, thank you guys for watching and listening. Again, I am JINJINX, something shield, something links in the description. Thank you so much for having me on SunTide. It's been a really fun conversation actually. It's nice to see that we have this chemistry that could keep us yapping for 3 hours and we had to actually cut ourselves off instead of just continuing. Much better than like awkward silence, no chemistry podcasts.
That's true. But yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, of course. It was
JINJINX.
such a pleasure. I'd love to do some more collabs like this in the future. And I guess you can...
Teach me how to charge blade.
Yes,
I
definitely need to teach you charge blade. But yes, I guess you can record whatever ending or whatever you want, because I really have to pee now, so I'm gonna...
Okay,
bye.
Cool. Bye. Genuinely, thanks.
Thank
I'll
you.
stop recording, but yeah, genuinely, thanks. I appreciate it. Bye.